by Northgate Ventures. At this point, I'm going to read the application into record. To the Zoning Board of Appeals, Northgate Resort Ventures LLC with Chelsea Bosenbrook, authorized agent, is requesting from the terms, a special permit from the terms of the zoning bylaws in the town of Hinsdale at the following premises: 212 Longview Ave, in the following respect: to expand the current use of a commercial campground in the R5 district in accordance with the Hinsdale zoning bylaws, section 4(2) R5(2). This petition was signed by their attorney, Jeffrey Scrimo, and that is the basis of the application that we are acting on tonight. Terry is our secretary. Terry, has this application been published according to the bylaws and posted in the Berkshire Eagle?
Yes, it was posted on November 23rd and November 16th.
Okay. Also, did all confirmed parties, were they made aware? Were they in the certified letters?
Yes.
Mailed out.
Certified letters, John Reed letters.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Jeff Viner. I am the ZBA chair. This is Bruce Alexander, a ZBA member. This is Dion Douglas, an alternate of the ZBA. He is here just in case, someone gets sick and, cannot make future meetings, and also just to keep up to date in the discussions. Our third board member is Dan Thornton. He is joining us via Zoom, via telephone Zoom. He actually had a COVID close contact and could not be here tonight, and he couldn't get a test in time, so we asked him to stay home for everybody's safety. In regards to this meeting, everything has been posted on the town website. You can go to the town website, go to the Northgate page. Northgate's complete application is there, as well as their construction documents, letters in support and letters of opposition of their project, and along with an analysis that the town of Hinsdale paid for. So all that, obviously you guys don't have all that information, but it is available on the town website for you to review. Another important thing is that we know that this had gotten started before. Like, Northgate has come and given us a presentation in this exact room. I just want to assure everybody, no decisions on this have been made at all. We are starting over from square one. This is now their application that we are moving forward towards, having a hearing on, and we will make a decision on. So there's been, just because the planning board had a meeting before, nothing has been set in stone, and nothing is moving forward or not moving forward until this board makes a decision. And at that point, it will still go on to other agencies. The Conservation Commission will get to weigh in and things like that. But I just wanted everyone to be assured that no decisions have been made, and we are here to collect information tonight from the public, from Northgate, and to ask any questions that we feel need for us to make an educated decision on this project. So I'm just going to give a couple quick things about how the meeting's going to go. First, Northgate's going to get up and give their presentation. We're going to give them as much time as they need to do that. After that, I'm going to open up the meeting to public comment. I've seen most of you around town. Let's all be respectful of each other. Everybody that wants to speak, I'm going to give you the time to speak. You're not going to come up and take the whole floor, though. I will cut you off if I feel like you've been going on for too long and let other people speak. You can come back up. After the public comment is ended, the board then will address Northgate with any questions they have. The board finally will openly debate. We'll debate amongst ourselves in a loud voice that you guys are able to hear, so that there's no backdoor proposals being made, or a different board member trying to convince a board member. The discussions are going to be held openly. Then after that, we're going to call for a vote, and the decision is going to be made. Now, it's very, very unlikely that we're going to get through all this tonight. And I can guarantee you that there's not going to be a vote tonight or a decision made. There's going to be a lot of information given. There's been a lot of information received, and the board is going to take their time with this decision, no matter how long it takes. We take this decision very seriously. And we're going to take the time we need to make it. So at this point, let's begin the Northgate's proposal. And I'd like to introduce their attorney, Jeffrey Scrimo. Jeff, if you don't mind coming up. Is it okay to call you Jeff or Jeffrey? Which do you prefer?
Yeah.
Okay, me too. Would you like a microphone, or there's not many people you can yell?
You can use the mic if you want.
You can do whatever you prefer, Jeff. Thank you.
Don't worry.
Yep.
Good evening, members of the community. Good evening, board. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Jeff Scrimo, and I'm the attorney for Northgate Resort Ventures, LLC. I'm here tonight to begin the discussion with you regarding Northgate's application for a special permit for a commercial summer camp in the R5 district. The location, as you know, is at the current Camp Emerson property, which is 212 Longview Avenue in Hinsdale. This commercial summer camp, as proposed, will attract high-end RVs to a clean, well-maintained, and family-focused campground for temporary stay family camping experiences in the summer months. I can guarantee you that this is not one thing. This is not Cousin Eddie's campground on the side of the road. Northgate their summer campgrounds are renowned for their safe design, monitored and enforced family-friendly behavior rules, and highly manicured grounds. This proposal will bring good jobs to the town, geographically contained and responsible development, and significant financial benefits for the members of the town and the community. I'd like to take a few moments to just introduce my colleagues who are here with me tonight. Here in person is Brent White, who's engineer from White Engineering. On Zoom, which is a little bit tough to see probably for the members here, members of the community here, is Chelsea Bosenbrock, who's the general counsel for Northgate, as well as Bob Mashad, and he's an engineer from MDM Transportation Consultants. As a bit of a preview of coming attractions, I'm here tonight specifically to discuss the legal basis for Northgate's application for the special permit. Brent White is here. He's going to be here to discuss some of the more technical issues. As you know, he's an engineer. He is here to answer questions and to talk about some of the technical compliance issues related to the special permit application. Attorney Bosenbrock is also going to be available to speak and discuss a little bit. It's got to be through the Zoom, obviously, but we'll be talking about kind of general questions about Northgate, about its campgrounds, and about the proposed project. And Bob Mashad will be here. He's again on Zoom as well to discuss the traffic study and related information. I would just tell you that Mr. Mashad and Mr. White just recently, last week, received some peer review documents and reports. So as Mr. White will likely discuss with you, there's probably going to be some additional time needed to respond to some of those issues that are raised and brought up in those peer reviews. So to get to the point of why I'm here, we have applied for a special permit for a commercial summer campground. And the particular section in the zoning bylaw is section 4, sub R5, subparagraph 2, sub E. Now, in considering Northgate's application for the special permit, we must begin with the town of Hinsdale's zoning bylaws. The 212 Longview property is located in the R5 agricultural and residential district. Pages 16 and 17 of the zoning bylaws set forth the permitted uses in that district. What we're particularly talking about today is subparagraph 2 in that area of the bylaws, which states that uses may be permitted with a special permit from the zoning board of appeals. And then there's a list of such types of uses that can be used with a special permit. And one of those is sub E, commercial summer camps. There's 3 main questions or issues that I want to address with you tonight. The first one is, what specifically is Northgate proposing? And I'm going to do that in a general sense. The engineers can talk a little bit more specifically on those issues and answer those kind of questions, but I'll be talking to you very generally about what Northgate is proposing. The second issue is what Northgate is proposing a commercial summer camp under the zoning bylaws? And the third issue is a commercial summer camping ground that allows RVs to temporarily camp at its facility restricted to being in a mobile home park within the town? So as one just quick side point on the legal issues, Northgate's application, I just want to be clear on this, Northgate's application stands alone under the zoning bylaw. It doesn't rely on Camp Emerson's prior use as a commercial summer camp or any other characterization of what Camp Emerson has done in the past. We're seeking to expand, generally speaking.
Please speak up.
Jeff,
Yeah, use the mic.
So could you speak into the microphone?
Doesn't fit here.
Sorry,
How's that? Is that better?
sounds better. Yep.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So because it's important, in case somebody didn't hear, I'm just going to go through those three main points that we're going to address tonight. One is, what specifically is Northgate proposing? Two is what Northgate's proposing, is it a commercial summer camp under the zoning bylaws? And the third issue is commercial summer camping ground that allows RVs to temporarily camp at its facility restricted to being in a mobile home park in the town? One side point before we get there, though, I do want to be clear in case I just said this, but in case you couldn't hear it. I do want to be clear here that Northgate's application stands alone by itself under the zoning bylaw. It does not rely on Camp Emerson's prior use. We're not seeking an expansion of a prior non-conforming use or anything like that. This is a specific application for a commercial summer camp under the bylaws. We're expanding, generally speaking, we're seeking to expand Camp Emerson's current use in the sense that the facility would be expanded. There would be some changes to the buildings and that sort of thing. But the Northgate's application stands alone under the zoning bylaw. Okay. So the first question is, what is Northgate proposing? Northgate is proposing a summer campground that's going to consist of 317 campsites for RVs. 100 of those sites will have model RVs that are owned by Northgate and be available for temporary rental for vacation purposes. Short-term, not long-term rentals. These are short-term vacation type rentals. There are not going to be any motorhomes, and we're going to talk some more about that, but there will not be any motorhomes as defined in the bylaws in this camp. All RVs will be for temporary short-term camping. No campsites will be used or allowed for living on a permanent, year-round, or even a long-term basis. The campground will operate throughout the summer months, and the campground will contain a number of amenities consistent with use as a temporary family vacation destination. So the second, now that you have just, as I said, I'm just going to give you a general outline, and you can hear more details when Brent speaks or when Bob speaks. But those are kind of the general outlines of what Northgate is looking to do as a use. So the question then, the next important question is what Northgate's proposing a, quote, commercial summer camp under the zoning bylaws? We submit to you that it is. The Hinsdale zoning bylaw itself does not define commercial summer camp, although it's used in the zoning bylaw as a use that can be issued a special permit. There is no definition in the bylaws themselves that define what a commercial summer camp is. Nor are there any known Massachusetts statutes or legal cases, at least that I could find, that define the term commercial summer camp, particularly and especially as applied to any other Massachusetts town zoning bylaws. So where there is no definition in the zoning bylaws, this is not a term of what we call a term of art that has larger definitional uses throughout cases or statutes in the Commonwealth. What the board should do and what you really have to do is to engage in the traditional rules of statutory construction and trying to determine what a commercial summer camp is. And in my memorandum, which I have submitted to the board, which is a legal memorandum, I do cite to some cases that provide that. But in generally speaking, just so that the community is aware as well as the board, what the board should look to is words. So this is kind of a quote from a general source on statutory construction. Words that are not statutorily defined are customarily given their ordinary meanings, frequently derived from the dictionary. And I can tell you from experience and from reading many cases and being involved with this sort of thing for many years, this is how courts interpret undefined terms. If there's no definition for it, they're going to look for the common use of the word, and they'll look to dictionaries to find that. So I'd like to reason with you through that exercise. We went directly to the core source of dictionaries in this country, which is Merriam-Webster, which is really the premier dictionary in the United States. And so if we look at this term, there is no specific term for commercial summer camp in the dictionary. So we have to look to each word. Commercial, I don't think needs much explanation, but is, according to Merriam-Webster, occupied with or engaged in commerce or work intended for commerce. The term summer, again, I think we all have a general sense of that, but as part of this exercise, we went through Merriam's dictionary, and the term summer means the season between spring and autumn, comprising in the Northern Hemisphere, usually the months of June, July, and August, or is reckoned astronomically extending from the June solstice to the September equinox, or to the easier one, the warmer half of the year. And finally, kind of the more important one here that we're really focusing on is the term camp. The term camp is defined by Merriam-Webster as a place usually away from urban areas where tents or simple buildings such as cabins are erected for shelter or for temporary residence list various types of people that would use that sort of thing, which includes vacationers. Now, if you also look in Merriam-Webster at the synonyms for camp, the word camp synonyms include campsite and camping ground. So summer camp can certainly, there's no doubt that the summer camp can also include a recreational camp for children. That is one type of a summer camp. In fact, I continued to look beyond Merriam-Webster's as I was preparing for tonight, and I did look for other definitions of summer camp, which just doing general online searches, and I can tell you I got some different definitions that do tend to say that at least one type of summer camp can be for children. One that came up was one of the first ones that came up was the Urban Dictionary, which defined summer camp as a place where parents send their kids to get rid of them and be happy, and a place where kids get tortured. So we're not looking for that sort of a camp. But certainly, then there was another one, dictionary.com, which is a little, I don't know really how reliable dictionary.com is, but that one was a little bit more mainstream, I would call it, which defined camp or summer camp as a camp, comma, especially one for children during the summer, providing facilities for sleeping and eating. Now, note that this definition itself doesn't say exclusively. Even this definition, which is not a mainstream, well, I don't know how good dictionary.com is, but it certainly isn't Merriam-Webster's. But it does not say exclusively for kids, meaning there are other kinds of summer camps as well. And this kind of summer camp is what we're proposing today. So the regular and common uses of the word really indicate that the Hinsdale bylaw, as read, must, at a minimum, also include a place such as campground that consists of temporary accommodations. And that's very important, temporary accommodations, because this is not a mobile home. And we're going to talk about mobile home in a few minutes, but campgrounds provide temporary accommodations for travelers in things such as tents, huts, campers utilized during the summer season as when on vacation. So the second issue, which I just touched on, or third issue really, is the question, is a commercial summer camping ground that allows RVs to temporarily camp at its facility restricted to being in a mobile home park in the town? And I don't want to get too much into the weeds here, but I think it's important that everyone understands that these are not, what Northgate is talking about here are not mobile homes as defined under the bylaw. The bylaw, the way it's written, and I don't have it to put on the screen, and so it's kind of even hard to explain. It's written so strangely, but essentially there's a subsection that says mobile homes, and it says, for the purposes of our bylaws, the following definitions will apply. And then it goes through 4 different definitional terms. One is travel trailer, and then pickup coach or pickup camper, motorized camper, tent trailer, and then the final definition is motorhome. And there's a big difference between the 4 first definitions and the 5th definition. The 4 first definitions all include in their definition a temporary dwelling for travel, camping, recreation, and vacation purposes. The definition for mobile home, however, says that it is a structure that's constructed for the purpose of year-round permanent living, essentially, which is much different than the temporary nature of the 4 prior definitions. Northgate is looking in this campground for the temporary 4 definitions prior to mobile home. This is not a mobile home. Mobile home is, these are not mobile homes. Mobile home is specifically defined differently. So importantly, again, I know you don't have the bylaws in front of you, so I don't want to go too much into the weeds here, but I do want to point out that the relevant bylaw does not prohibit trailers or campers from the town of Hinsdale. It merely sets limitations how residents store or park those temporary accommodations on their property. So they prohibit people from basically parking an RV in their front lawn and sleeping in it and staying in it. That's not what Northgate's going to do here. Northgate is not setting up a campground on the side of the road or in front of a house. This is going to be a well-contained, which you'll hear more information about, but this is a well-contained campground where these RVs would come and go on a temporary short-term basis. So based on the above, on the legal issues, Northgate respectfully submits that its application for a commercial summer camp should be fully heard and considered on its merits. We ask that the board continue to hear the factors that are necessary to determine if Northgate satisfies the findings required under section 6E5 of the special permit. However, those factors require, and they heavily rely on the information you're going to receive from the experts and the engineers on this. So I'm not going to address those at this point, but they will fully be able to present their work over this meeting and likely another one, I'm sure. So if there's no other questions, I would hand off to Brent White, and I'd like to thank everyone for your time. I know some of this stuff is a little bit glazed over the eyes talking about bylaws, but this is the fun that I have on a daily basis, so I wanted to share it. But if there's any questions, certainly from the board or.
We're going to address those at a later
Sure.
time.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Just ask him to speak into the mic, would you?
Yep.
I don't think people can hear.
We just make sure to speak into the mic. If you want to pull up a chair here to spread out your information, and you can hold the thing, that's fine too.
Everyone hear me okay?
Is it
I don't
on?
know.
Did you turn it on? Tap it. Yeah, it's on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Better.
Dropping notes. Again, good evening, board. Good evening, everybody, and good evening to everybody listening. My name is Brent White, and I'm a professional engineer with White Engineering in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And it's also my pleasure to be before you this evening. Would it be possible to show our site plan on the screen? Zoom possibly a little further. So as stated in Jeff's introduction here, the property is located at 212 Longview Avenue. As we designed this site, one of the first things that we looked at is how do our proposed customers, how do they enter and exit our property? Looking more closely at the existing driveway configuration, we knew from our analysis, working with MDM, Bob Michaud, a transportation engineer, as well as consulting with the town's department head, specifically fire and police chief, we understood that the current driveway access to the property is of great concern with respect to the vertical curvature in the roadway and sight distance for cars both entering and exiting the property, as well as those passing along the property on Longview Avenue. So the first element that we have that we're pleased to present with our site development is a relocation of the curb cut to the property. I know it's difficult to see on the screen at this view here, but we've taken from where the existing driveway is, and we've shifted it approximately 220 feet further to the south, higher on Longview Avenue, which was really going to allow us to optimize the stopping sight distance that is necessary for both, again, vehicles passing on Longview Avenue, as well as our customers coming to and leaving our subject property. We felt that was very important to first establish how people get in and out of our property safely before configuring the road network throughout the subject property itself.
Brent, will you just point that out? You mind walking up there and just pointing out the beginning, the entrance on the map so the public can see what you're talking about?
Our existing driveway is approximately where my pen is, right here, and we have shifted that further to the south. And I know, I'll speak back to the microphone.
Yep, thank you.
I also know some of the slides that Mr. Michaud has to share with us this evening help better show the vertical curvature of the road and how the relocation of that driveway has made that more safer. And I'm pleased to report that our peer review concurred that was a proper relocation of the driveway for the property itself. In laying out the 317 sites here, obviously we have a number of constraints. Mainly we have Welch Brook that bisects our property, which is the solid blue line that goes north to south. We also do have an intermittent stream that ties into Welch Brook. In blue is Fernwood Reservoir. Okay, not a problem. So then somewhat centered on the screen there is again the Fernwood Reservoir, which current campers have enjoyed, and we expect the patrons of Northgate resorts to enjoy as well. And we also have what you see there in green are a series of limits of bordering vegetated wetland, which are regulated under the Wetlands Protection Act. Any work that is within 100 feet of those green polygons that you see colored, as well as within 200 feet of Welch Brook, are subject to review by the Hinsdale Conservation Commission. One of the benefits of this property for the applicant here is the fact that it's an existing customer of the water and sewer system. Furthermore, one of the benefits we have is that the rear of our property is indeed the Belmont Reservoir, which has a 12-inch water main that runs. So go back over here one more time. So this road, as it goes off between, leads to the reservoir itself. This is the main access the town has needed through our property. There we go.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'll bring a laser pointer next time.
Got to talk into the mic.
I was just identifying the access road of the town. There's been some questions with respect to this access here. The road itself is on property owned currently by Camp Emerson. It will be owned by Northgate with acquisition of the property. The town of Hinsdale does maintain a 30-foot right of way through our property to get from Longview Avenue to the reservoir, as well as for the main water line, 12-inch ductile iron water main to serve the town coming through our property. Part of our goal to minimize environmental disruption here is to actually serve on the left-hand side of the screen. Our goal would be to tap directly off that 12-inch main to provide the water service for that portion of the campground itself. In our view, the benefits to that are, one, we're taking the water directly from the main closer to where the work will be, resulting in less pressure loss of the water system that's serving this portion of town, and frankly, just less excavation on the property to provide water service to those campsites.
Excuse me, Brent, this will not do. We can't really see the map or what you're talking about. If you could make it bigger, that would be great.
Hey, Dave, is there a way for that to be, for him to be seen and the map to be seen, or no? The screen?
No.
Screen's
I
probably
think
more
we need
important.
to see him. I think we need to see the map.
Yeah, the map is more important than the speaker.
Thank you.
So.
Bob, can you make that happen or? Well, I think we need to.
For those at home,
Through the screen.
I'm sorry, please.
I was just saying, I think we need to turn the camera towards the screen for now or no? Go ahead, continue. We warned that we weren't going to stop it for AV problems. People should have came.
Well, again, generally speaking, for those who can and those who cannot see the map, we have a right of way that the town of Hinsdale owns through our property to get from Longview Avenue to the reservoir itself, and that also provides the right of way for the main water service serving this portion of the town itself. This property also, one of the greater benefits is we have municipal sewer available to us. We're not having to deal with an existing septic system or having to upgrade a septic system as part of this. Obviously, we have a great amount of topographic change throughout the property here. So the way that we intend to connect to the sewer is by placing a series of low gravity grinder pumping stations. They're a system that we've used with great success on many lakefront communities, other areas that have retroactively gone off of septic systems and tied it to municipal sewer. And in this case, especially based on the seasonality of this here, we felt that the low pressure system will be on a long-term basis easier to maintain, certainly for the applicant itself. Ultimately, discussions that we've had really since we started this work last spring, understanding one of the greatest concerns the town would have was with the increase in facility flow based on Northgate's proposal here, the fact that there's currently a gravity fed connection to the municipal sewer currently, that with the increase in potential flow, that may have detrimental impacts on the municipal sewer. So to accommodate that, what we have proposed is a series of pump stations, much like what you would see for a larger septic system, where all the sewage will eventually drain from our property through the series of the low pressure grinder pumps, as well as gravity sewer manholes throughout the property. Ultimately, all sewage will go to a main collection point in close proximity to Longview Avenue, and will be outfitted with a pump that will allow us to control and meter our sewage discharge into the system in the attempt to avoid conflicts with peak flows related to traditional peak flows of people showering in the morning, dinner times, things to that effect. By having that much storage capacity, approximately 30,000 gallons on our property, that allows us to better control and really ensure that we don't present a conflict based on the current pump system services, Plunkett Reservoir and other areas on Longview Avenue further to the south. As a part of the review comments that we've again received last week here, there were some recommendations as it relates to operations and maintenance, which we completely agree with. Would expect that would be incorporated into any final sewer connection associated with the town. There's certain elements with regards to the internal sewage collection system that more information has been asked for. And I'm certainly happy to work with the peer reviewer to provide that information to the board. Nothing. I didn't see anything with regards to the water and sewer comments that we wouldn't easily be able to address. There are some comments that we'll have to get some more information offline as it relates to the recommendations on the connection fees for water and sewer. That was a new development for us reading that peer review. So that's something we would reserve comment or judgment on beyond this evening here. So we may have more information and discuss that with the board at a later time. Really, the last element with regards to a development of the size here is obviously stormwater management. We have a fair amount of road network that exists, and we're currently going to be expanding that to the service of the development itself. So we have identified a number of sub-catchment areas throughout the property where we ultimately plan to collect our runoff through a series of deep sump catch basins, proprietary storm scepters. They're units that we've used with great success in environmentally sensitive areas. They have elements to them that allow more sediment and dirt to be retained within that unit to have a cleaner quality of effluent that leaves that beyond what a deep sump catch basin would typically be able to provide. And then we have two methods of disposal of that stormwater. First, we have a number of rain gardens throughout the property. The benefits to rain gardens are they're like a detention pond in the fact that they can physically store a volume of water, but they're also planted with native shrubs. So many times our lowest points where we drain the water are adjacent to wetland and wetland resource areas. By having the rain gardens, we're actually improving having more natural vegetation closer to them. There were some comments in the review that we expect to respond to that will help, I think, give us a better opportunity to explain our methodology. I've had multiple discussions with Caleb Mitchell, the conservation agent, and he is the agent that we've worked with for a number of years, and explained to him just at an application earlier this month on the theory of stormwater management. When I graduated in 2005, we would always design for the 100-year, 24-hour event. And we would use software to essentially figure out, as we increase the amount of runoff from a site, how do we size a detention basin or some other structure so that peak flow, we don't increase the amount of water coming out based on our proposed improvements. What I found is, especially as climate has changed, the type of rainfall, the type of rain events that we have, we're not concerned, personally, in my view, we're not as concerned about the 100-year, 24-hour event. 100 years is a misnomer. The fact that what it represents is a 1% probability. 100-year storm is a 1% probability that will have a certain amount of rain. Well, if you look at a 100-year storm diagram, there's no one definition. The amount of rainfall is based on the duration of the storm itself. A 100-year storm in this area may be 3 inches of rain in 1 hour, 7.8 inches over a 24-hour period. What we're finding is we're having these storm events, the 1 hour storm, where it's again, so what we've tried to provide with this design is the ability to retain that very first flush, that very intense rainfall. So we're not designing this in a way to just meter out the water slower on. We really want to be able to retain on our site to really minimize any of those impacts during that flash rain event itself. And I think with the chance to work with our reviewers, we'll be able to better explain that. I think that's all I have at this point.
Okay.
I believe Bob, if you'd be able to turn that over to Bob Michaud, he should be able to share his screen. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members. For the record, Robert Michaud, a principal with MDM Transportation Consultants based in Marlborough, Massachusetts. I will do a share screen and present, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So I'll need to have privileges to share screen, or the Zoom operator will need to pull up the submitted PowerPoint slides that I provided.
We're gonna pull up the shared screen, Bob. Yeah, we're working on getting you the shared screen.
Great. Okay. There we go. Okay, so excellent. Yeah, so I'll cue you on the slides. Thank you very much. So again, for the record, Robert Michaud. We can go to the next slide. What I'd like to do is really provide a brief overview of what we've presented in our traffic impact and access study. And there are really 3 principal points to make. First, that the site access and the circulation aspects of the property were very carefully evaluated. And we're pleased to report that with the relocation of the driveway further to the south, closer to the crest of the hill on Longview, that we're able to meet the applicable sightline standards, which are based on actual measured speeds along that roadway. And I'll elaborate on that in a moment. Secondly, that the driveway is being redesigned with appropriate geometry to facilitate and allow for the swept path movements of emergency responding vehicles should they need to get to the property, as well as some of the larger recreational vehicles that will occasionally need to use that driveway. The second point has to do with the traffic generation for the intended use. ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, provides a fundamental basis of estimating how much traffic a campground / RV park would generate. That's a specific land use category that's recognized nationally. And we also have the benefit of having actual measured performance from several of Northgate's facilities in New Hampshire, as well as Massachusetts, to be able to compare to that national data. And third, we've conducted an operational analysis that confirms that there is in fact ample capacity on the area roadways with relatively minor trip impacts during the highest turnover periods, if you will, of the campground itself. So the next slide presents an overview of which intersections we studied. These happen to be what we call gateways, primary gateways to get to or from the campground facilities. The primary means of doing that from regional locations would be the Route 8 corridor to Michaels Road and then to Longview Avenue, right? So each one of those intersections shown in red dot was the subject of traffic counts that we conducted in the spring and early summer of this year, and served as the basis for our understanding traffic flow conditions currently and how those traffic flow conditions would change with the campground in place. The next slide indicates that during the data collection phase of the study, we took time to really understand travel speeds on Longview. We're well aware that there's an advisory spot, a speed advisory sign that's currently placed on Longview. It flashes your actual speed as you pass it, and that was an indicator to us that there may be higher than regulatory speeds happening out there, and the speed information that we've collected confirmed that. While the speed limit is currently posted at 25 miles an hour, the average or mean travel speeds through that area closest to the campground driveway range from 30 to 33 miles an hour. And the 85th percentile speed, which usually serves as the basis for design, was measured at between 37 and 39 miles an hour. So these are statistics that are very indicative of people having a certain comfort level and familiarity with the roadway in this particular area, and they feel comfortable traveling at higher rates of speed. And hence the placement of that speed advisory sign to try to inform people of how fast they're actually traveling. So the 85th percentile speed really provides the design basis for where the driveway should be, so that there's adequate sight line or visibility for an oncoming car to see someone leaving the driveway, and vice versa for somebody who might be leaving the driveway to see an oncoming vehicle to be able to make an informed choice as to when to make a turn. So the next slide presents the outcome of a very detailed analysis that we've done that looks at the available sight lines at a location that's optimally located along the Longview Avenue corridor, right? And so you'll see in red line format the relocation of the driveway from its current location to a point about 220 feet to the south, right? And the proposed location is shown in red, with a vehicle making a turning movement from that driveway in the upper part of this diagram. And you'll see that on the lower portion of the diagram, there's a vertical profile that indicates the grade of the road taken from that proposed driveway location. And what this exercise allowed us to do is to actually measure the sight lines that would be provided by this proposed new location. And we're pleased to report that based on the 85th percentile travel speeds, that this proposed relocated driveway meets or exceeds the applicable standards for sightline. So this vastly improves the ability for somebody traveling on Longview to see the driveway, and vice versa, someone leaving the driveway to see an oncoming vehicle. So it meets the applicable safety-based standards and criteria. The next slide indicates some of the vehicle turning maneuvers that would be anticipated at the driveway. These are computer modeled turns for two vehicle types. The upper vehicle type is a recreational vehicle. The lower is a larger bus, right? We know that the campground today already accommodates some of these larger vehicles, but we want to make sure that the curb radii, the width of the driveway, where it's located properly accommodate these. And that's what this computer model indicates, that all of the proposed geometry will accommodate these larger vehicle types without having to turn into the opposing lane. The next slide presents yet another auto turn analysis of two vehicle types at Michaels Road and Longview Avenue. These would be the turns making right turn from Michaels to Longview to go to the campground and vice versa, leaving the campground to go to Michaels Road, making a left turn onto Michaels. And it again shows that whether it's an RV or some of the fire apparatus that the town currently has and could potentially use as part of a response, that the existing layout of that intersection can accommodate those types of larger vehicles. The next slide presents a similar exercise. This is for the Pittsfield ladder truck. So to the extent you needed to have a regional response with larger fire apparatus, even those larger apparatus have the ability to properly make turns to or from Longview Avenue from Michaels Road. The next slide, again, on the topic of site circulation and vehicle access, specifically models vehicle turns at Route 8 and Michaels Road. This is a question that came up during our initial presentation and in our prior work and presentation to the town, is that there was a question as to whether or not the geometry at that intersection would be adequate for a larger responding vehicle or an RV vehicle to get to Michaels Road or from Michaels Road. And the answer is that it does, that the intersection was reconstructed by DOT in the recent past, and it meets all current applicable geometric standards that would allow for the swept path of either an RV vehicle or a larger fire apparatus that would need to be traveling in this area. So all of that checks out quite well. The next slide shows the same exercise for the fire apparatus. Again, it shows everything works without encroachment on opposing lanes. And in the next slide set, finally, for the larger aerial Pierce Aero XT fire truck, right? It's a ladder truck. Also can maneuver quite easily, frankly, within this intersection. The next slides present the basis of trip activity, right? Trip estimates for the campground. I mentioned earlier that these are based on industry standards that are published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. These are specifically cited for campground and recreational vehicle park facilities, which are combined into one campground category with ITE as it's defined by ITE, and represent the peak hours of activity for campgrounds, which happen to be on Fridays and Saturdays. Right, these tend to be the campground turnover periods when people are either checking in or checking out. And application of those industry standard rates to 317 campsites generates between 67 vehicle trips on a Friday morning to 86 vehicle trips on an evening peak hour. And on a Saturday, somewhere between 50 and 75 directional trips, or 123 total vehicle trips over the course of its peak hour. The next slide really presents a comparison of those industry standards to actual measured performance of several of Northgate's operational facilities. These include Westwood Shores in Ossipee, New Hampshire, Mighty Joe facility in Milton, New Hampshire, and the Carver Yogi Bear facility, one of its newer facilities in Carver, Massachusetts. We actually took the data from each one of those sites for the Friday morning, Friday evening, and Saturday midday periods, and we've applied those trip rates that were measured at each one of those to the 317 campsites here to see where those numbers would land relative to the ITE standards. And we're pleased to say that the ITE standards actually generate either the same or higher trip estimates compared to the actual experience of Northgate, right? So the use of the industry standards is conservative. It represents a worst case condition. The next slide is a representation of the hourly traffic flow patterns that we expect would occur on the highest day of activity on a weekday, which would be a Friday, anywhere from midnight to 11 p.m. at night. Right? And these are based on the actual measured performance of the more recent Carver facility. applied to 317 campsites. And you'll see that there are blue bars here as well as orange bars. The blue bars represent passenger vehicles. The orange bars represent recreational vehicles, RVs. You'll see that during many of the hours of a Friday morning, that you'll see anywhere from 20 to upwards of 50 total trips being made over the course of an hour. As you get closer to the early afternoon and mid-afternoon hours, that's the period when you're going to see a slightly elevated period of activity as people would be checking in or checking out of the facility, for instance. And you'll see that for a Friday at about 3 in the afternoon, between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, and maybe between 6 and 7 p.m., you're going to see about 100 vehicle trips being generated. And of those, only between 3 and 7 would represent recreational vehicles, the larger vehicle types. So the vast majority of trips that campgrounds generate, and specifically Northgate campgrounds, are passenger vehicles. Recreational vehicles, the larger vehicle types, by and large, are very limited in terms of the number that they generate over the course of a typical hour during these shift periods, these turnover periods. The next slide presents an equivalent for a Saturday period, and you'll see that the recreational vehicle trip activity is even lower on a Saturday. They tend to be a higher level on a Friday during a check-in period. Again, vastly different, most of the trips being passenger vehicles, of about the same magnitude, about 100, a little over 100 vehicle trips during the midday on a Saturday. And in the next slide, this is a Sunday comparison. You'll see that there are lower levels of activity on a Sunday, but similar trip patterns generally to the Friday and Saturday conditions. The next slide presents a very pictorial version of traffic volumes that would occur during what we call the design hour, right? This is a Friday evening period when the campground is generating its highest level of trip activity, and that the activity on Longview Avenue and Michaels is also at its highest level during a weekday. And that combination of trips, when you really look at this, and these are individual turns that are being made either from the driveway, which is in the upper left corner of this drawing, or at the intersections of Michael Road on either east or west side, is that the overall number of vehicles that are using Michael's Road and these intersections is relatively modest. If you were standing at the corner of Route 8 and Michael's Road on a Friday evening, somewhere around 6 to 7 p.m., for instance, you would see coming from the north, traveling south as a right turn, fewer than 20 vehicles per hour making that turn onto Michaels. And likewise, if you're traveling north on Route 8, pointed up, and you're making a left turn onto Michaels Road, that's less than 10 per hour. Okay, and on the opposite side of Michaels, you'll see that there are less than 30 turns, just over 20 actually, turns, making a right turn from Michaels into Longview, and fewer than 20 making a left turn from Longview to Michaels. So these are relatively modest numbers. That would mean that you'd see a vehicle every 2 to 3 minutes making a right or a left turn at any one of these intersections. It's a very modest number. The next slide presents the equivalent for a Saturday midday condition, which is slightly higher, but still has relatively modest traffic volumes of about 30 or fewer vehicles making turns at any one of these locations. And in the next slide, the outcome of this was used to analyze how much delay and queuing might actually occur at each one of those gateway locations at full operation of the campground under essentially a summertime condition. And what it shows is a letter grade rating, which goes from a scale of A, meaning minimal delay, to F, meaning long delays. And for every one of the gateway locations, the driveway and both ends of Michael's Road, we see that we're at level of service A, which means that there's very little delay being experienced or that will be experienced, assuming full build out of the campground under future build conditions. All right, so this is not a project that will introduce lots of delay. It will not introduce lots of vehicle queuing. There is ample geometry to accommodate the vehicle types and volumes that are being proposed. There's ample geometry to accommodate emergency response to or from this facility. And we are actually improving the safety characteristics of the existing driveway by relocating it further to the south to meet applicable standards. So with that, I'll conclude. Low impact project. I'm glad to answer any specific questions. I'll hand it back to, I guess, either Brent or Jeff. Thank you.
Brent or Jeff, do you have anything further? Or is your presentation over?
I don't have anything further.
Or does Chelsea wants to say anything?
She'd like to. I think we hit most of the points, but,
Okay, so are you confident that your presentation's over?
well, I think there's more to be done on the engineering aspects
Okay,
based on some basic, not right now.
right, yeah. So nothing more you'd like to present right now?
This time, correct.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. To the people out there on Zoom, I apologize for not getting that map up while Brent was up there. We're doing the best we can with the technology that we have here. So thank you, and I apologize for that. All right, so Northgate has finished their
Will
proposal.
there be a question and answer period?
Yes, that's coming now in the public comment section.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So Northgate has finished this proposal. At this time, I am going to open up to public comment. It's going to be a little tricky. You know, we have people on the phone, we have people on Zoom, and we obviously have people here. Before we start, I am going to lay down a couple ground rules. First, we know there's several questions. So again, let's try to be respectful of everybody here, not hog the time. I do reserve the right to cut you off and, you know, move on. Everyone is going to get a chance to speak that wants to speak. I am not going to allow you to come up here and ask 10 questions at a time. You're going to ask a question, you're going to come back to your seat, and then, you know, you can come back up and ask questions if they haven't already been asked again. Another thing to know is your letters have all been received. There's been several letters opposed and in favor of this project. They are all available on that website, the Northgate page on the town website. They've all been received by this board. They've all been read by the board. So we are looking at those letters. You do not need, unless you feel the need to stand up and reread your letter. We have it, we have read it, and the concerns are noted. Like I said, only, you know, come up and ask a question. I am going to ask you to come up, grab a microphone. I'll set them right here. When you do come up, please state your name and your address. And the last thing, I just remember that, you know, with Zoom, this is being recorded. You know, choose your words wisely. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to public comment. For lack of a better method, it is going to be, you know, raise your hand and I'll call on you like we're in elementary school, which we are kind of in middle school at least. So that's how we're going to do it. The mics just flick on. And we will alter back and forth between members that are here and people that are on Zoom. So we're now going to open the public comment section. And who wants to start? Now, UNC guy right here. Sorry, I do not know everybody's name, so it is going to be awkward. I'm going to point at you, you know, say that guy over there. But that's how it's got to work. Sorry.
Can I use this mic?
If you want to, yes. Just make sure it's still turned on. And again, just please state your name and address for record.
Yes, is it on?
Sounds like it.
My name is Dwayne Bruce. I live at 55 South Shore Road. I'd like to state my agreement with the Northgate attorney that the terms are very important. The terms we're going to use, commercial summer camp, summer campground, RV park. And I'd like to, and if I carry on, feel free to
Yep.
Shut up and leave. I have a procedural issue. Northgate asserts that it, quote, wishes to expand the current use of a commercial campground.
Wait, just gotta pull that mic down a little bit, speak closer to it. There's no feedback.
That's what it says in its application sheet. But if we move to page 4 of its application, Northgate shifts from the claim it makes at the beginning. On page 4, it states Northgate's application for a special permit to continue and expand the camp's use as a commercial summer camp is in compliance with the provisions of the bylaw. Thus, this, to say the least, creates confusion. We're left wondering what Northgate's self-understanding of its intention actually is. Does it see itself as expanding a commercial campground, as it claims in the application cover sheet, or expanding a commercial summer camp, as it states on page 4? The attorney might say, well, they're synonymous, they're interchangeable. But I'd like to submit that these terms are not synonymous, that it would be an abuse of language to use them interchangeably. And I want to suggest some working definitions. Counselor said that when we don't have stipulated definitions in a bylaw, we go to ordinary meaning. I'd like to suggest that the ordinary meaning of a commercial summer camp, remember that's what the bylaw allows, is an entity that enrolls young people, typically from 6 to 16, for a fixed period of time, a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, during the summer, under the close supervision of counselors. Campers typically participate in highly structured activities, aquatics, sports, and crafts. The zoning bylaw, which I believe were written in 1979, said that commercial summer camps were okay in that district. Of course they were, because there were already 2 of them in the district. And the writers of the zoning bylaws knew what a commercial summer camp was, a place that I just described. A commercial campground, on the other hand, is an entity which provides customers with a place to pitch a tent, rent a cabin, or lean-to, or park. In return for a rental fee, customers receive access to water and sewer hookups. An RV camp or park exclusively serves users of RVs and campers of various types, either by providing parking pads with sewer and water hookups or by providing rental RVs. Counselor might say, well, he's skewering the definitions, the argument he wants to make. But I want to suggest to you that all of us would agree with those definitions if we thought about it for a minute. Let me suggest a little thought experiment that we can all participate in for a second. Suppose you got yourself a nice RV, a trailer, a 30-foot trailer. You hooked it up for your maiden voyage to your SUV. You and your spouse took off in the morning, and things didn't exactly work as you'd hope. You screwed up on the reservations, so you don't have a confirmed reservation to the place you thought you'd go to. And you got off at you navigated incorrectly and got off at the wrong exit of I-91. So you're now in some dark country road. But up ahead of you, you see a split in the road. If you go left, you see a sign that says Whispering Pines Camp for Girls. The right fork says Jelly Belly's Campground. Now you got to make the right decision here. Your spouse would like a hot shower, cold heater, and the use of the bathroom. It's up to you to make the right decision. Show of hands, how many of you, to find a place to park your RV, how many of you are going to go to Whispering Pines Camp for Girls. How many of you are going to go to Jelly Belly's campground? So my point is that ordinary usage, people just using the language are able to distinguish between a commercial summer camp, Camp Whispering Pines, and a commercial campground, Jelly Belly's summer campground.
Got it. Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate it. Anyone from Zoom out there have a question? Not right now? All right. Right there. Feel free to grab a mic or come up if you don't want to walk up the stairs.
Papers down.
Good evening, Chair Viner, Mr. Alexander, Mr. Thornton, Mr. Douglas. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I did submit, my name's Eric Waydell. I live at 40 Rose Drive in Hinsdale. I did submit a detailed set of papers, but last night at about, and I would normally rest on those, but last night at about 8 o'clock, there was a distribution by Ms. Douglas of Mr. Scrimo's memorandum of law. And I'm going to try and keep the comments addressed to that because I know that the other item was lengthy.
Thank you.
And please cut me off if you think I'm going too far. The Hinsdale zoning bylaws are what's known as prohibitive bylaws. So what this means is that any use that's not permitted, specifically permitted in the bylaws, are prohibited. That's distinguished from other towns' bylaws, which might be more permissive in types. Summer camps are not automatically permitted in Hinsdale. Summer camps are permitted in the R5 district with a special permit issued by you, and that's really why we're here tonight. But summer camps, which existed prior to the adoption of the 79 bylaws, think Romaca, think Emerson, they are allowed to continue because they were pre-existing non-conforming uses. But a new camp would have to come to you and say, I want to be a summer camp in Hinsdale. There is no provision in the zoning bylaws for campgrounds allowed anywhere in the town. And there is no provision in the zoning bylaws for a special permit to be issued by a campground. So to issue to a campground. So the real issue here today is Northgate RV a summer camp or is Northgate RV a campground? And they can't really claim that they are a summer camp because the only similarity between them is the word camp in summer camp and the word camp in campground. Camp Emerson operates under CMR, which is the Massachusetts Code of Massachusetts Regulations. They operate under CMR 105-430, which is called minimum standards for recreational camps for children.
Can you repeat that number? Sorry. Can you repeat that number?
Yeah, sure. It's 105 CMR 430, which is entitled Minimum Standards for Recreational Camps for Children. It's part of the State Sanitary Code, Chapter 4, and that defines a camp as a residential camp, which is a program which meets the definition of a recreational camp for children operating between any period of time between June 1st and September 30th of any year, or fewer than 15 business days during any other time of the year. So that is really to correspond to really a school year, the concept of a recreational camp for children. Northgate, on the other hand, which is a RV park, although they want to call themselves a summer camp, is regulated by a different sanitary code, which is the next section over, which is 105 CMR 440, which is entitled Minimum Standards for Developed Family Type campgrounds. And what's interesting in that section, and this is very important, very significant. Section 440.01 of that section of that code, which Northgate is subject to, and you could ask them at the Carver, which they operate in Carver, Massachusetts, the Cranberry. You could ask them which section they operate under, and they'll have to answer the section 440. So, but the definition is very interesting. It says the family type campground may accommodate tents, motorhomes, expandable camping units, and such other devices as may be developed and marketed for the camping trade. But hear this one. However, the definition specifically provides the term family campground does not include a children's day camp, recreational camp for children, mobile home park, or picnic area. So the section of the code of the Massachusetts Code of Regulations, which they are subject to, specifically excludes recreational camps and day camps from that definition. And the definition of summer camp, honestly, is not something that you have to get out of a dictionary. It is something I think that we all can apply common sense to. And I think they're challenging everybody's common sense by looking at the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which is a very good dictionary. It's one of the most used in the United States, but somehow that dictionary is devoid of a definition of summer camp. But when I got this email last night, I went on to the Oxford Dictionary, which is actually the preeminent dictionary in the world. And the Oxford Dictionary defines a summer camp as a camp providing recreational and athletic facilities for children during the summer vacation. And that is what Camp Romaca is. That is what Camp Emerson is. That is what Camp Taconic is. Danby, I know, is just a little over the line. That is what Camp Danby did. And I agree with Mr. Scrimo that there were no definitions in the bylaws to defining summer camp. I believe Mr. Wang has found some definitions, which he may be presenting later. But what there are, and I'll be happy to supply it later because I only saw this last night, there are legions of court cases where there are personal injury cases involving summer camps and personal injury cases involving campgrounds, where the judges in those cases refer to summer camps as summer camps and campgrounds as campgrounds. There's actually matrimonial cases. I felt sorry for some of the husbands in the cases I looked at, but there are actually matrimonial cases in Massachusetts where the husband, as part of child support, was directed to pay money for summer camps, was never directed to pay money for campgrounds. So Northgate's, and what I also want to say though is, although I was not present at the 1979 meeting at which this was adopted, I don't think any of us were, it was clear that there was the intention to consider future summer camps because the town felt that they were of some value to the town, and that they also did not put too many strains, too many demands on the town. Look at Camp Emerson, which is open only now 6 weeks of the year. Back in 1979, these camps were open 8 weeks of the year. The children come in, they come in by bus. They are pretty captive. They seldom leave. Maybe they leave for intercamp games. Maybe they go to a movie. Maybe they go to Friendly's in Pittsfield. But when they travel, they also travel in packs. And they travel in large either vans or buses. So the car count, the vehicle count is not greatly affected in the town. Contrast that with the projections of Northgate of 200 and some odd RVs at least coming in and out during a week, although the average stay is about 3 to 4 days. So you might double that, and only putting 3.86, as Ms. Bassenbroek had said in an email, in each vehicle, and you'll see how many vehicles have to come in and out to replicate what's going on at Camp Emerson currently. And Northgate, despite what Mr. Scrimo said, what the gentleman, I have never met you, but I'd like to, what that gentleman said was the application does not stand alone, or if it does, then the application has to be sent back to be resubmitted because the application seeks permission to expand the use of the commercial of the commercial campground use in the R5 district. And first of all, it's not a campground use, it's a summer camp use. And the other thing which I turned up again just this morning, and I'll give a copy to Mr. Scrimo, and I don't know if I made enough copies for everybody because my printer ran out, but I have 2 licenses for Camp Romaca, which is like Camp Emerson. And there's one from 2000 and issued in 2013. And it indicates that on the lower left, it calls itself, the permit calls itself a residential summer camp with full dining hall services permit. And then there's another license, both from the town of Hinsdale from 2019, which indicates that the camp is complying with the Massachusetts general law that I had referred to. The Code of Regulations 105 CMR 430. So Hinsdale recognizes.
We can make.
Sorry, I'll give one to Mrs. Scrimo. I'd rather because he would like. Mr. Scrimo, if you'd like. So Hinsdale recognizes that the words summer camp and recreational camp for children are essentially synonymous. Just bear with me just another 2 minutes or so. Okay, Northgate's intentions with respect to the RV park include the construction of a general store with an application going in to get an alcohol permit to sell alcohol on the property. The use of alcohol is expressly prohibited in recreational summer camps. I wish when I went to summer camp, I had a place that served alcohol. They did not. It also prohibits the sale of tobacco and marijuana, or the use of it on the and the use of those 3 vices on the property. And one can reasonably expect not only will they be selling alcohol on the property, but they will also probably be selling tobacco and seeing what's going on in this part of Massachusetts, probably marijuana someday. The other issue is that Camp Emerson only operates during a approximate 6 to 7 week period from the end of June to the middle of August. Northgate indicates that it's going to operate over an almost 7-month period. In their first application, they said April, now they're saying May, but they're saying April or May through October with the possibility of going out for special events on either side of that equation. So you have a 3-season operation which wants to call itself a summer camp. It absolutely defies logic. And not to get into the weeds, but I know Mrs. Scribble didn't want to, but I feel like I need to for a minute. Section 7A2 of the zoning bylaws deals with the issue of whether you can have RVs anywhere in Hinsdale at all. And I agree with Mr. Scrimo that it wasn't the best, again, we weren't here in 1979, but it wasn't the best use of words where they have a definition of mobile home used as a broad definition, and then they have in the same section a subset of mobile home. But what is interesting here is that if we look at section, and I think you can look at it later because it's if you look at
Try to wrap up. We got a lot of people to get
wrap up.
started.
Okay. But if you look at section 7A1, A1, A and B, it talks about sections A, B, C, or D.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't talk about section E, which is that mobile home section in that part. But it talks about the fact that residents can store vehicles on their property, but cannot use the vehicles. But then if you look at section 2, it talks about mobile homes, which can be used in an R5 district, but only in a mobile home park. And the issue there, though, is it doesn't say mobile homes under section E, which is that subsection. It just says mobile homes. So whoever wrote this chose to put A, B, C, or D in the upper part, but didn't put E in the bottom part. So I submit that that is an all-encompassing definition of mobile home, which is prohibited in the town of Hinsdale. And then I have more, but I know you got more people. So I just want to leave with one other point, though. Even if you do not deny this on the basis of the zoning bylaws, if you get to the point of deciding whether there's a special permit to be issued, you have to find that the proposed use is no more detrimental to the community of Hinsdale than the current non-conforming use of Camp Emerson. And on a whole host, which I'm sure other of my neighbors will be talking about, on a whole host of levels, no one can rightfully say that what's going to happen here is going to be less detrimental to the community than what's going on right now in Camp Emerson. And I thank you very much. I'd like to submit more papers later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bob, let's go to John Burrows from Zoom, get some Zoom people.
I'll make sure I'll have an opportunity later. So.
Yes, yeah, sorry, if you're asked a direct question, then we'll take your response right away. That was kind of pretty indirect, in my opinion, so.
I just want to make sure.
Yes, you will definitely get your chance to respond. John, are you there, John?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my name is John Burrows. I live at 233 Longview Avenue. I've lived in that home for 17 years with my family. And a couple comments or questions that I have. You know, obviously this is going to be ground zero for me and my family. And, you know, if you read the town of Hinsdale zoning bylaws, you know, read the purpose section, just those bylaws, as well as the Hinsdale Hinsdale vision plan. They pretty much have the same verbiage. And one of the things that talks about in there is to conserve the value of land and buildings. Well, how is this proposal going to conserve the value and land of my home? It's absolutely going to be extremely detrimental to the value of my home. I've already had prospective buyers in the area tell me that they don't even want to look in the area right now, if in our neighborhood, if with this proposal, Northgate proposal as it stands right now. So that's one question I have, is how is it going to protect my value of my home? Two.
Is that a specific question you're asking someone, or just a concern?
Just think about it. Just think about it. It's a rhetorical question. It also, the Hinsdale zoning bylaws talks about the purpose of the bylaws is to prevent overcrowding of land and lessen congestion in the streets. Well, I hear this traffic study talks about modest traffic increase. Well, 1,000 vehicles a day or over 120 vehicles an hour, for me, is a lot more than just a modest increase. They're all going to go right by my home. The entrance to this facility is going to be almost directly across from my driveway into my home. This is more than just a modest increase. It has nothing it absolutely does nothing as far as lessen congestion in the streets, as it mentions the purpose of the Hinsdale zoning bylaws. It also talks about the purpose of the zoning bylaws to prevent blight and pollution of the environment. Well, pollution to me is also light pollution and noise pollution. This facility is going to be completely different as far as the noise pollution and the light pollution. When he's talking about building miniature golf courses right across the street from my house, parking lot, splash pads, all these vehicles coming and going, the headlights as they exit and enter out of that facility is going to go right into my home. All the lighting that's going to have to be put in there is going to go right into my property. I might forget about trying to look at stars at night in my home, because it's going to completely change the environment in my home. It also talks about in the Hinsdale bylaws and the Hinsdale vision plan to preserve the natural, scenic, and aesthetic qualities of the community. Well, I'd like to have someone explain to me how this is going to do that. It's going to do the exact opposite. It also says, quote, employ various measures for the protection of the town's existing small town character, open spaces, and low density of population. The population of this 317 RV park is going to be half the population of all of Hinsdale. And it's going to be right across the street from where my family calls home. So those are the questions I'd like people to think about when we're talking about this proposal. It doesn't fit any of these purposes that the town of Hinsdale zoning bylaw states, and the Hinsdale vision plan pretty much states the same exact verbiage in that vision plan. It doesn't fit any of these by any means.
All right, thank you, John. I appreciate-
I'll conclude with that.
All right, thank you for your comments. The board, be sure that the board has heard your comments and they will process them in making their decision. Thank you. Let's go to the crowd.
May I just answer the direct question on lighting specifically?
Sure, we have, John, actually, we have Brent wants to answer you directly on a question about lighting.
Yes, thank you. The application clearly notes any proposed light structures. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, put it in your mouth.
Close to. We have committed to any proposed light fixture, whether it is a wall fixed structure on any proposed buildings or pole mounted structure, that they will be a dark sky compliant fixture. That is in the application. And we would suspect any special permit that would be granted would likely call that out as a specific condition of our any proposed lighting that would be constructed on the property, either along the roads, at the campsites, or at any of the other improvements on the facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda,
Hi, I'm with Downey. I live on Goodrich Street.
you gotta, sorry, Linda, because it's being recorded, you have to come up and grab a mic.
I've got a big mouth.
I know, that was our deterrent, though.
I know.
Figured if someone had to get up, they might not do it.
All right. Never stop me from making a scene. Hi, my name is Linda Yarmy. I live on Goodrich Street in Hinsdale. I'm also the facilities manager at Camp Emerson. You people keep saying that they're only open for 6 weeks. Camp Emerson is actually open from the end of June through October. We do our 6 weeks of kids camps. We do family camps. We do women's weekends. Believe me, women have a great time when they come. We also do church weeks. We have 2 different churches that come in and spend the week with us. And we go right through October, and we also do Halloween. So for all you people who keep saying, oh, these camps are only open for 6 weeks, we're open a lot longer. You just don't realize it because we keep the noise down. And Northgate's gonna do the same thing. They are very respectful. I've talked with the owners. I've researched this myself. They're very respectful of the neighbors. And I can't really see why everyone is getting so upset about this. I think this is gonna be a great thing for this town. This town, when I moved here 32 years ago, this town had a lot of stores, it had 2 bars, it had restaurants, it had laundromats, it had a lot of stuff going for it. Right now, we've got nothing. We have no youth center for our kids. Northgate's gonna be like a shot in the arm for this town. It's gonna bring in business, it's gonna bring in people, yes, it's gonna bring in people. But it's going to make money for this town, it's gonna make our town even better. All I gotta say.
Thank you, Linda. Bob, you want to go to someone on Zoom? Yeah. Heather Lee, are you there?
Yes, thank you. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I might whisper because I just put my toddler to bed, so.
Okay,
we'll
Heather,
see
we
how
just
this
need you to state your name, even though we
Yep.
can read it, and your address, please.
Heather Lee, 122 Michaels Road. My family has owned this property 36 years. Oop, did you lose me?
Nope, you're still there.
My AirPods died. So I just have a quick question. It'll be super direct. 122 Michaels Road, and I think I said that. My question is about the public beach. So you have 317 campsites, potentially 600 plus people a weekend in the site. How is that going to affect the local families wanting access to the beach and the causeway for fishing? And in the last meeting, Northgate was unable to answer the questions around what's the intended use or regulation, or how they're going to regulate their lake access. And I'm obviously very particular about this because it's one door down from my house on Plunkett Lake. So those are my two very specific questions around how are they going to regulate their visitors utilizing the small pond in which we live on.
Thank you, Heather. Does anyone from Northgate, Brent, or anyone want to respond to that, or?
We have it in here. Excuse me 1 second, please.
Yep. Heather Brent is going to come to the podium and address that question.
Thank you. So I am referring to page 5 of the special permit narrative, subsection 3. Northgate will not exceed Camp Emerson's present Plunkett Lake access and use, and we are committing to continuing to use only 2 ski boats and sailboats with a maximum of 5 to 6 people per ski boat, 5 sailboats with 2 persons in each sailboat, activity for 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon, and that there will be parking for 3 vehicles only on our property.
Just to further her question, that didn't really answer how you're going to control it, or the mention of the town beach, and there is no mention of the town beach and what you just stated. Do you have any comments on that, or not at that time? Not at this time.
At this time, I do not, but I would defer if Chelsea Brosbrook might or have anything to add to that. She might be able to expand further how they would control the access to the 3 parking spots.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm less worried about the parking spots because they can just walk down the street. You're talking about hundreds of people on how you guys are good at footage. What is that? 50 feet of lakefront property there at the public beach. I just think it's a really big concern and to not have a plan laid out at the beginning of your proposal.
Heather, thank you for your concerns. Do we want to see if Chelsea wants to respond to that in any way?
Yeah, it's a public beach, so that there's not a ton that we can do to prevent people from using a public beach. However, that being said, the amenities that we put in place at our camp resorts, I mean this in all due respect, most people are going to choose to stay on site and use and access those amenities rather than hauling their kids, rather than hauling, beach toys, whatever, to the public beach.
Will you have, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, will you have rules around bringing watercrafts into the RV park then?
Yeah, absolutely, we will.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
What are those rules on watercraft?
Like we mentioned, the watercraft on Plunkett Lake will be no more than what is currently used.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, not that. Say I'm a RVer and I'm pulling my pontoon boat behind me. Are you gonna allow people to bring their boats from home into your RV park and then be able to use the public boat launch?
No, we don't allow that because of insurance purposes.
Okay.
All right, we're moving on. Blue coat right in front.
I'm
Thank you,
just
Chelsea.
curious as to whose insurance? Is it the lake's insurance or the camp?
The RV.
Chelsea, don't answer that. We're not taking that question right now. We have another gentleman coming up. Put that thing in the worst possible spot. I moved it and everyone just.
Thank you. My name is Dick Rusin. I live at 481 Michaels Road, which is the corner of Michaels Road and Route 8. So I have personal experience with the comings and goings between Route 8 and Michaels Road. The very first person that stood up when I was paying the very most attention, and I'm sure everybody else was, emphasized over and over again the word temporary. And I believe that. But what that really means is there's no learning curve whatsoever for the people using this facility. So they don't get, as residents who move in, get the opportunity to learn how to deal with a narrow road, how to make a turn near a guardrail without going over the double line. They don't realize that if they sneak an inflatable watercraft out of their RV and take it to the public beach, that they're not supposed to do that. All of these things are experiential. They're not necessarily determined to be violations, but there's no opportunity to learn anything. Next week, the person sitting at that same pad is going to make the same mistakes. They're not going to know how to drive the narrow, curvy, hilly roads. They're not going to know how to dodge the potholes on Michael's Road. They're not going to know a lot of things. And as soon as they make a mistake and pay the penalties, they're going to be replaced by somebody else who also doesn't know any of these things. So the residents are looking at this from a practical standpoint. We're saying, look, the police have not been able to control speeding on the street. It hasn't been a problem because the residents, as was pointed out, are comfortable. They understand when it's safe and when it isn't. How are we going to maintain any kind of order and prevent chaos when we're changing out on a weekly basis half the population of the town of Hinsdale? It is a virtually impossible task, no matter how well intended our town officials are, no matter how well intended the management of this proposed facility will turn out to be. It's just an impossible task. And when you look at it from a practical standpoint, you're a resident of the town, what do you conclude? You can tell by driving up these roads, looking at all of the yellow signs, and the conclusion is we're not going to be able to tolerate this. We're not going to be able to live with it. And I would just suggest that we avoid all of these potential common sense issues that we're going to have by putting an end to this right now when we can do it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Bob, after this, we'll go to that person up there.
Mr. Viner, members of the board, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Joseph Horton. I live at 575 Longview Avenue, and my family has been in Hinsdale and on Plunkett Lake since 1938. I've been there virtually all my life with a few stints out of town. But I'd like to express my concerns about the proposal. Given that this property falls squarely within the watershed of the Belmont Reservoir, a water study done by the town indicates that that is a very high quality water source, but also exceedingly fragile. And the same words are used in describing the Hinsdale Flats area of environmental concern. Extremely fragile, rare species, and again, this property falls squarely within that designation. Another point I'd like to make is about lake safety. If anybody's heard about the guy who was involved in a boat accident on Plunkett Lake a few years ago, that person was me. And that boat was a craft from Camp Emerson. In the course of the investigation, I was in a rowboat, by the way. In the course of that investigation, it was established that the most traffic that Plunkett Lake can handle, high-speed towboats, is 2 at a time. This proposal highlights, I believe Mr. White just reiterated that the plan is to have 2 boats for 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. How do we reconcile any other use of the lake? And by the way, that's 2 boats with nothing else on the lake. When you consider the setbacks, the Massachusetts Environmental Police have stipulated that you can have 2 boats lawfully and safely on the lake at one time. I think that needs to be considered. Finally, I think it's important to consider when we're dealing with an entity, where the entity has acted before and how they've treated members of the town, how that's worked. And I refer to a case, it's Northgate versus the town of Milton, New Hampshire. And I just want to establish that this is the same entity that we're talking about. Is this the same Northgate? Milton, New Hampshire? Yes?
Yeah, friends, that is, you verify that the Milton location is a Northgate property?
Yeah.
Nobody seems to, can somebody verify that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can verify that.
Okay. June 10th, 2020, New Hampshire Supreme Court last week unanimously upheld the town of Milton's denial of a special exception for a major expansion proposed by Northgate Resorts for its Mid-Joe campground on Northeast Pond in that town. And basically what that was about was that Northgate purchased a property and sought to raise the capacity from 223 to 396 in 2017, 5 months after they purchased the property. And the town rejected, the ZBA in that town rejected the proposal, saying the expansion would create an undue nuisance or serious hazard to pedestrian or vehicular traffic. That was the town's concern. A serious hazard to pedestrian or vehicular traffic. And Northgate took that to the New Hampshire Supreme Court and lost. Is that goodwill? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to a Zoom question, Bob. Yeah, user LP.
Hi, that's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Lori Powers, 59 Henry Drive in Hinsdale, which is on Ashmere Lake. So I'm here to support the people at Plunkett. You had mentioned earlier that there were going to be a number of financial benefits from this Northgate opportunity. Is there anywhere that is specifically spelled out? How much money the town will be receiving from this? How will it be used to facilitate the infrastructure that is already failing in this town that cannot support anything that Northgate is looking to put in there, as far as I can tell? How many employment opportunities will be there for the either, I don't know, is it 6 weeks now we're talking about, or 7 months of employment? The infrastructure, again, I was going to question about that. I just don't see how, when we already have major sewer problems in our town that cannot be addressed properly because we don't have the finances, is Northgate going to take care of all of that and all the facilities that need to be dealt with at the 317 units that are going to be in there? Let's see, I think I'm on the fourth question now. There's been an issue about the driving in and out. The map usage was very unuseful for those of us that are on Zoom. We weren't able to see exactly where the new road is because there was no delineation on the map to say what was the old one, what was the new one, and pointing at it didn't work. So I have completely no idea how much better that is supposed to be or not. But for the most part, I think that anybody coming in from out of town is probably going to rely on GPS. And more likely, it's going to take the shortest route there, which I understand might be not using Michael's Road or using Michael's Road. I'm not all that familiar with that area. I just know that it's congested. And if GPS is going to be the way to go, I know from friends of ours trying to get to our lake, it never works. And the gentleman earlier who was saying that people won't know what they're doing, and it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same situation over and over and over again, because there'll be new people coming in every weekend, not knowing what they're doing in the area. And another one I wanted to ask, as far as the lake usage goes, and if anyone is allowed to bring in a boat, will there be any kind of rules or regulations that will be taking care of boat contamination that could bring in environmentally unfriendly items into the lake? And with
Thank you
that,
for your
I will-
question.
Pardon me?
Chelsea, do you want to respond to any of those?
Yeah, I'll respond to the boat question. No guests are allowed to bring their boats on site. So that's a rule. So I hope that takes.
Chelsea, this is Jeff Biner, Chair. Question to follow up on that. How about kayaks? Are they allowed to bring kayaks? I mean, how can you really stop that?
Yeah, I don't know that we can stop kayaks.
Okay, thank you. Anything else you want to add?
Well, back to me, Lori. Sorry, but if they can bring in kayaks, they can also come in with, again, unfriendly environmental issues. And there's probably no place over there to clean off a boat to put before you put it in the water. So it's just going to be another nightmare to be added to the situation.
Well, to be clear, there is a public launch, so I don't know that there's a bunch of monitoring of everybody who uses that public launch either. At some of our campgrounds, we do have a mandatory boat wash station where we have direct access to a lake. So the Mighty Joe location, as well as Westward Shores, we have mandatory boat washing stations with good signage. So again, I don't know that we can prevent people from bringing in kayaks or stand-up paddle boards, but we will not allow boats, watercraft to be brought in to the best of our abilities. And then, from there, we can't really do a whole lot to monitor that public boat launch, but we'll put out the literature that we can, advising people what they can do to help prevent the spread of invasive species.
Thank you.
Would you consider putting in a
Lori, we're
facility
moving
to-
on.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to some of those points, please?
Yes, Brent wants to respond to some questions.
Try and go in order that they were asked. First, with respect to the infrastructure, it should first be noted that Camp Emerson is currently connected to the municipal sewer with a gravity sewer connection, which is an ideal configuration, does not require the use of any pumps. Certainly, based upon our topography, we do require certain pump stations to get the sewage from the various portions of the property to Longview Avenue. However, we have committed to undertaking at great expense to the applicant, constructing a pump station that would not be required based upon elevation, but designed in a way to better collect, manage, and discharge in a more controlled manner our sewage into the municipal sewer system in a way that will not conflict or create a conflict, as was suggested or was raised as a concern, if we simply had a gravity connection directly into the Longview Avenue sewer that we are currently connected to. As it relates to GPS and wayfinding, one of the recommendations that we put in the application and our reviewer agreed with was that working with the Department of Transportation and the town of Hinsdale, that wayfinding signs would be the most direct way to help ensure that we are directing our customers with the most direct path directly to our property off of Route 8. So that is our way of trying to better address with respect to how a GPS may foil someone's ability to get safely to our property in the way that our traffic study indicates. And the last thing that I'll identify, and Chelsea spoke to this earlier here, is when reservations are made, Northgate will send the proposed customers specific, rules and regulations as it relate to what is expected of them on our property. And that does a number of things for us. One, it gives us another opportunity to specifically explain to our customers how we want them to come to our property. Secondly, it would give us an opportunity to identify in Massachusetts, anytime I take my kayak, whether it's Stockbridge Bowl, wherever I am going, I have to have a piece of paper in my windshield that says that I certify that my boat is clean based upon the, I believe it's Department of Conservation and Recreation requirements for boats to be washed to avoid
zebra mussels.
Zebra mussels, thank you very much. So again, we can easily incorporate that as a part of our requirements for anyone who may bring a kayak or other non-motorized boat. But again, to reiterate the point, we do not want customers bring motorized boats onto our property. If you look at our site plan, we do not have room for boats to be stored at a campsite. So I really think that is a moot point and one I don't think should be considered as a concern for the fact that the applicant on multiple occasions and would expect a special permit would condition the fact that motorized boats would not be allowed to be transported to the site based on patrons, which easily be enforced by the building commissioner as your zoning enforcement officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name's Fred Wong. We live at 19 Bonnie, and we actually just moved in to what I thought was going to be a seasonal resident, part-time resident, 2 years ago. But what a new pair of eyes will tell you is you have a wonderful town, absolutely beautiful, tranquil town. And most of our neighbors are wondering, does this guy ever go home as a part-time resident? Because it is really so beautiful. And I think it's beautiful because your bylaws you defined the vision that you want, a tranquil rural town, and your bylaws have been successful in protecting that for 40 years. So what I'd like to do is focus on the bylaws and ask you to, even though Mr. Scrimo didn't want to get into the weeds, I would urge you to get into the weeds of the bylaws, because this is what has created this beautiful town and what will maintain this beautiful town. And so I think the first point I'd like to address is section 782. Which clearly says mobile homes of all types are not allowed for any purpose anywhere in town. Now, the critical issue here is the definition of mobile homes. I would argue your bylaws are very well crafted, are very well thought out, because you had to deal with summer camps and RV parks. Fernwood Resort, Fernwood campgrounds existed prior to this. So I believe they've been very crafted if you spend the time to get into the weeds about this. So the definitions has mobile homes. So the one thing that was awkward was that they used the term mobile homes twice. Once is an inclusive definition, which includes 5 different types: travel trailers, pickup campers, motorized campers, tent trailers, and again, a subtype mobile home, which is the large non-motive issue. So there is an all-inclusive definition, and there's a very subtype specific definition that's just like RVs and tent trailers. The section 7A1 refers to the first 4 types. And when they do list the first 4 types, they specifically reference them as A, B, C, and D. So such as every time they refer to specific subtype, they refer to A, B, C, and D. And then when they went to 7A2, they did not. If they meant it to be restrictive to just the subtype, they would have said 2E. So they meant the all-inclusive definition there. So the other reason I think it means it was all-inclusive is that the other half of section 7A2 says that you can use mobile homes. My interpretation is all-inclusive in the case of a dwelling being destroyed by a natural holocaust. Okay. Why would you want to bring in case of a natural holocaust, a huge non-motive vehicle that would be hard to install, hard to bring in? If you have an apartment building, how are you going to, and with 4 people, how are you going to get huge mobile homes? This is not section, and these 2 things are attached. Mobile home and the total prohibition anywhere in town, and mobile home in case of natural holocaust are in the same sentence. So you can't say I'm restrictive here and inclusive here. It's inclusive everywhere, okay? If it's not inclusive, your house burns down, you have an RV in there, you can't live in there according to section 7A1 unless you go to the select board and ask for a permit. Does that make sense? I mean, does it make sense to exclude the permit?
Hello, Dave.
Exclude.
I do apologize for the intervention here, but
Hey, can you mute that?
So,
thank you.
So I believe that term is inclusive, and I wish you'd look at it. I'd just like to move on And the other thing I think that we should think about, well, let me move on a second. Second point is this issue of definition of summer camps. And, you know, this has been dealt on, that we should just use the common definition, common use of summer camp. I point out that the argument that Northgate used that they were summer camp was dictionaries and synonyms. They didn't provide one aspect of their operations which would fit a common definition of a summer camp. So I believe most of our summer camps are accredited by a national association, Summer Camp Association. How many of the accreditation criteria of a summer camp would this operation entail? That requires a supervision ratio of staff to children, staff to campers. It requires vaccination, health requirements. It prohibits the use of alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana on summer camp. So it wouldn't be accredited by a national association. So I think we do struggle for a definition. So I found with COVID funding, the state of Massachusetts has used the COVID funding to help stabilize summer camps. So in 2020, they put out an RFP and awarded 14 grants to, I've awarded several grants on the order of 14 summer camps in Berkshire County, all of which fit the summer youth camp concept. There are no RV camps or campgrounds that receive summer camp funding. They put out an RFP again. Again, the title of the RFP from the Executive Office of Education of Massachusetts is 2021 Summer Camp Request for Proposals. In the second paragraph, second sentence, they define summer camp. Summer camps provide a lifeline for social and learning engagements that enable youth to thrive. Furthermore, families depend on such programs to ensure their children are participating in safe activities and environments outside of the school year. So they define summer camps to be in the summer months outside of the school year. They target it as youth oriented. The proposal operations that they're proposing are catering towards adults. They're allowing tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana use on site. They are in fact putting an alcohol sale of alcohol on site. How does that meet the Massachusetts state definition of which we fall under of a summer camp? I think it just defies. And the last point I'd just like to come back to is that one of the first requirement, the finding required for a special permit, it's in compliance with all the bylaws and the general intent and purpose of the bylaws. So again, go back and think about when these were created. The town had to deal with the summer camps that currently existed, the Taconics, the Ramacas, the Emersons, the Lenore, as well as Fernwood. And so they had to put forward, so they grandfathered in, that takes care of that, but how do you put forward? What are the rules going forward? Do you want more summer camps? Yes, they want more summer camps like the ones they existed because they gave the special permit. Do you want more? It's obvious the question they had to deal with. I mean, because you're grandfathering somebody in. Do you want more facilities like Fernwood Campground with RVs? I would argue the general intent and purpose of these bylaws is to say no. All types of mobile homes are prohibited everywhere. And they go exhaustively after that to protect in 7A1 the rights of the individual property owner, right? But even then, they restrict living in it. And the general intent and purpose of these bylaws is to avoid RV use because they recognize if all those summer camps converted to Fernwood campgrounds, it would overwhelm. They took care of all these issues that we're thinking about. The way you preserve the vision of your town and the character of your town for a quiet, tranquil, rural facility that's nice, town that's nice for pedestrians and senior citizens, is to ban all future RV parks. We'll grandfather one we have in, but we're not letting any more in. And I would argue that you've been very successful with that. And your bylaws are in fact very well crafted And I would beg you to just follow these bylaws that have served you so well over 40+ years. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder, everyone, it's been really great, but we're not going to allow people to talk over other people and to chime in when other members of the public are speaking. So please try to limit that to a minimum. And when I mean say minimum, I mean not at all. Thank you. Let's go to Jeff Saltz. Let's go to Jeff Saltz via Zoom.
Thank you. Let me just turn on my audio and video. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, town residents, for this opportunity to speak. My name is Jeffrey Saltz. I'm the owner and director of Camp Ramaca at 380 Longview. I've had the luxury and pleasure of operating and owning Ramaca since 1995. So it's been very much a strong and lengthy part of my life. And I put a lot of hard work into being a great, I think, member of the community and trying to be sensitive to the needs of the community where and whenever I can. On many occasions, I've appeared before this very board to ask for consideration in projects that we have tried to put forth that have been complementary to the town and to the people who are in our adjacent community on Plunkett. And while I can say we've always had, very good outcomes in working together, at times it has been obviously an inconvenience and caused us delay in having to go through that process. But the important takeaway is that we have always been deferential, and I have always been utterly respectful of the work that the board is charged with doing, which is to try and promote a cohesive, comfortable, safe, an enjoyable place for the people of Hinsdale to live. And I support that wholly and wholeheartedly because I am a member of that community for about half of the year. And like I said, it's been a big part of my life. So with all due respect to some of the discussion, especially at the beginning, and I'm certainly not trying to be pejorative here with Attorney Screamo, but I, as a professional camp director, take issue with any characterization that an RV park is a summer camp. 105 CMR 430 is a very lengthy, clear, and very reliable regulation from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that every camp director, including Camp Emerson owned by Sue Line and the other camps in Hinsdale and all throughout the Berkshires of Massachusetts, all have to operate under. And there's no way on God's green earth that there is any room for interpretation that a campground with an intended use such as Northgate could possibly ever fit into the category or meet the criteria of 105 CMR 430. And respectfully, I submit that they are operating, Northgate is, under a completely different set of regulations that speak to a whole variety of different challenges that industry must deal with in maintaining safe operations. But there are critical differences between the guidelines that both industries follow. And I don't want to be repetitive. I certainly don't want to take up the board's good time with this because I know that documentation was submitted by Eric Goydell, which had a nice chart that laid out the differences and the distinguishments between the two different sets of guidelines and regulations that the two industries have to follow. So I don't want to take up time, but I do want to point out that they exist and that there's no way that you could objectively say that a summer camp and an RV park are the same. And I think that that's very, very clear. And doing anything otherwise is playing fast and loose with the English language. As far as considerations on Plunkett, I think there are many. And for me, being a primary taxpayer in the town of Hinsdale, I go to great lengths to be a contributor to the good things, as I said, in this town. I believe this project would cause irreparable harm to the lake and to the surrounding community, and quite frankly, to my business. And having an influx of the vehicle load that has been described, even if that's conservative, I think is going to be detrimental to the immediate community around us. It is going to change the character and the feel of what we have to deal with. For years, I have dealt with people interloping on my property, people coming through Nessacus property to get to Plunkett Reservoir from Fernwood Campground. And why? It's because it's not because they're bad people. It's because they're trying to find their way in an unfamiliar place to something that they want to do. And when they're wandering through my property and creating a security challenge for us, we have young little girls, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 16 years old. They're coming away from home, away from the safety of mom and dad, where we are charged with protecting them from any peril of the outside world. That is a primary focus of what Fred and the Board of Health asks us to do when he comes out for our annual inspection every year. Something we take very seriously. Bringing in 1,000, 1,500, 900, 700, 1,200 people, whatever it may be, is going to be a tremendous load of people who, while they may not actually be bringing boats with them, are still going to want to go down and look at Plunkett Lake, access Plunkett Lake, swim in Plunkett Lake. And when they do that, they're going to be passing right by my property to do so. If they go down to the boat launch with a canoe, they're right across the street from my entrance. I'm not creating a penitentiary. You know, we have a fence, but that's not going to stop people from wandering on. And I kick people off our property all the time who are just trying, they just want to look. They just want to see what's there. It's natural curiosity. Our job is to protect young children. And I believe that's going to be a very, very difficult challenge. In addition to that, we are forward facing on Plunkett Reservoir. We have a long area, probably 8 to 10 times the length of Camp Emerson to protect. And over the years, when Duquette's sports camp was in operation, we at a minimum ejected 75 to 100 interlopers who would come up onto our docks with canoes or swim from Dan Duquette's because they were bored, the young kids, they had nothing to do. They punctured our Whibbit or inflatable a number of times, broke signs, broke our dock, tried to get on our boats, damaged our sailboats. I am all for organized camping where there's supervision, but with all due respect, I am an expert at dealing with young people and people who are in their 20s. And when they get bored or they're looking for something to do, they're going to find trouble. And when there's 1,000 of them, some percentage of them are going to come looking invariably for trouble, and they're going to find it. And I think that this is going to be just simply too impactful for this very small 75-acre lake of Plunkett. It's already a challenge getting our 2 ski boats around that lake, which we don't even run them all day. And with all due respect, neither does Emerson. They don't run their ski boats all day long. They certainly have the right to do so, as do we, but I am out on that lake every single day of the summer, giving tours, watching the kids, swimming with my campers. And I can tell you that Camp Emerson does not operate its boats all 6 hours of the day that has been discussed here. If they were in Northgate to operate boats 6 hours out of the day, that would be utterly devastating to our ability to run our ski boats. There's just not enough lake to do that, and also satisfy our neighbors who are residents on the lake as single-family homeowners. The last thing I want to mention to you, the best laid plans of mice and men. I hear you. You're going to tell your people not to come by any other way other than the way you tell them to come to your RV park. Come down Michael's Road. But make no mistake, these are human beings we're dealing with, and they're not going to listen to you. And why won't they listen? They're not going to listen because people, when they're stressed and they're on vacation and they're going somewhere and they are thinking, they're not thinking with their best and highest mind. They want expediency and efficiency. They go to GPS, and GPS tells them what? It tells them to take the shortest point. And what's the shortest point? The shortest point is to come down Plunkett Reservoir Road. I know this because I have so many families who have never been with me before, who come to visit to send their child in a future summer. And what is one of the first things that many of these people tell me when they arrive is they say, Jeff, is that the only way that people can get to camp is through that dirt road? And I say, absolutely not. We have a nice paved road on Michael's Road that you can take. And I say, we actually mention that very, a number of times in our documentation that we send to you by email before you come. It's also painstakingly written on our website, but they don't. They hop in the car, they press the button in GPS, whether it's Google or Waze or, Google Maps or Apple Maps, and they end up taking the road that is the most expedient. If they're coming from Pittsfield, very likely they're going to come up Pittsfield Road, turn left on Plunkett, and you're going to have hundreds of vehicles going down a road that was never made to handle modern day traffic. So I think that is a consideration that has been largely ignored here in the conversation. I am in support of the process of due process for this application, because that's the same process I have to live with when I come to you to do anything I need to do within the town of Hinsdale. And I'll respect your decision ultimately, but I believe that the zoning does not support this application because the words are incongruent with one another. The use is incongruent with what's going on now. And I believe that at the end, one of the critical pieces that needs to be satisfied, which Eric Goydell mentioned very eloquently, is there needs to be no additional burden or detriment to the town than what is already existing in the non-conforming use. And there is, in my experience as a professional camp director of over 25 years, in my 20 prior years as an employee and camper at our brother camp in Beckett, almost the entirety of my life, I do not believe in my heart that anyone can look at this project and say there's going to be a net zero impact that's going to be negative to this town from what is being proposed here. And there are various and sundry more items that I could expand on. I'm going to leave it at that, but I believe the zoning at the end of the day is what is the black and white here. And there's no playing fast and loose with the English language. Summer camp is a camp like Ramaca. It's a camp like Emerson, Danby, Watito, Greylock, Belvoir. There's no camp director on planet Earth that would say an RV park is a summer camp. And I challenge you to find one who will do that and agree with that. Not one. You're not going to do that because it's not the same thing. So I thank you for your time. I hope that I've been helpful. I hope that if you have any questions, you'll feel free to reach out for me. I'm happy to provide any more information or color that would be needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. You want to respond to that?
I've been referenced 3 times.
Yes. Yeah, sure. Yes, of course.
3 quick points.
Yeah, no problem. Of course, reference, please answer.
Thank you again, board. Thank you again, board and members of the community. I just had 3 quick points.
Yes.
Members of the community have made very eloquent arguments.
I can't hear him.
But can you hear me now? Okay. Members of the community have made very eloquent arguments. But I still don't understand the basis for the argument of relying on 105 CMR 430. The term used in 105 CMR 430 is very clear. It's recreational camp for children. You're right, there's no dispute what that means. It's a recreational camp for children. Nowhere in 105 CMR, in the definitions, particularly in 105 CMR, does it use the term commercial summer camp. If the bylaws had intended to limit the special permit to a recreational camp for children, they certainly could have used that term. It's very hard to tell how long these regulations have been around. It looks like they were last updated in 2018, but it's very difficult to know. But to the extent that they've been around since sometime prior to that, no doubt, that term, recreational camp for children, should have been known by the town. And it was never used in the bylaws. The bylaws use the term commercial summer camp, which is defined nowhere else. We have to go to the dictionary for that. The synonym is clear for camp, campground, or campsite, essentially. So this is not a recreational camp for children. We're not seeking a recreational camp for children. We're seeking a special permit for a commercial summer camp, which is something different, has to be different. Sure, it can include a recreational camp for children, but it's not a recreational camp for children. That's not what the bylaw says. That's not what the bylaw calls it. Respectfully, it's improper, legally speaking, to guess at what whoever wrote this thought they were writing. We have absolutely no evidence of what they thought. We have absolutely no evidence of what they intended. There's no documents, there's no record that I'm aware of that says, this is what we meant when we wrote commercial summer camp. It just doesn't exist. So we can speculate as to what we think we wanted to say, but that's not what it is. We have to look to the common terms. The way you do that there's just tons of case law on how you do this. You go first to the common usage as defined by the dictionary. I have brought you the definitions direct from Merriam-Webster, which is the premier dictionary in the United States. That's what the definition is. Could commercial summer camp include a children's recreational camp for children? Of course it could. It could fall under that rubric, but it also includes more. It's more of a broad term than children's camp or summer kids camp or summer sports camp. It's commercial summer camp. That's a broad term. It includes more. And finally, I do want to just address this mobile home situation. It's hard to get into the weeds because we can't put this up on the screen, unfortunately. But so I'm going to have to try and describe it. The way the bylaws are written, there's a very broad general definition section. The word mobile home is in that, and it says, doesn't define mobile home at that point. It says, for the purpose of this bylaw, the following definitions and descriptions will be used. It then goes through A, B, C, and D, all of which are temporary dwellings for travel, camping, recreational, and vacation uses. And then it specifically defines what a mobile home is. A mobile home is a movable, portable structure built on a chassis and having no motive power of its own, and designed to be connected to utilities and to be used as a permanent year-round dwelling. I want to be clear. Northgate has no intention of hosting mobile homes as it's defined in this. And further evidence of the fact that mobile home does not include trailers. If you look at the heading of Section 7 of the bylaws, the heading itself of Section 7 of the bylaws says mobile homes and trailers, mobile home parks. So in other words, it recognizes right in the heading that mobile homes and trailers are two different things. And it goes through in that bylaw specifically dealing with trailers, campers, and all of those temporary type of mobile RVs. And it specifically deals with mobile homes, which mobile homes, as is you find in basically every bylaw in Western Massachusetts, at least, when your house lights on fire, you can usually, according to bylaws, temporarily put a mobile home, a true mobile home, on your property to live on while that house is being repaired. It's a very common thing you see in bylaws. So those are my 3 points. One, we're dealing with a commercial summer camp, not a recreational camp for children. The bylaw does not say camp for children, it says commercial summer camp. And my mobile home and we cannot rely on what we think the drafters meant, because we have to look to the common terms when we don't know what they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Fred.
Get it, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be brief. Reason I'm here is because it's been brought up multiple times. There's been in my view, a mischaracterization of customers, the future customers of Northgate Resorts. This idea that people are simply going to just check their phone or check their GPS. The first comment was raised with respect to every weekend, there's new people coming to town. There's new people who are not going to understand how to maneuver. It's been my experience, and I'm sure Mr. Michaud can speak in greater detail, that owners of RVs are probably some of the most careful and skilled drivers. So I think to characterize them as the same as a teenager getting their driver's license, that they wouldn't be able to maneuver tight corners or narrow roads, I would suggest the fact that they purchased a recreational vehicle puts them in a different category of the fact of, one, their ability to drive such a vehicle, and two, the fact that they're likely to be better planners as it relates to where can they go, where can they get fuel, where will they have the ability to obtain potable water, sewage disposal here. So this mischaracterization that they're somehow just going to flaunt whatever the destination that they're going to, suggestions that they're going to give them for the best way for them to enter our property, I just think misrepresents the ability of the applicant to communicate with their customer correctly to safely get them to our property. So this idea that even though it's going to be different people on different weekends, I think we want to take a closer look at who are the customers, what equipment do they own, and what is their ability to get that equipment to and from our property. Thank you.
Thank you. I was intending to stop this meeting at some point around now, but I really like to power through and get the public comment portion of this done. If we can't get this done, I feel like when we reopen a meeting and the public comment section is still going, that we're never going to advance anywhere in this meeting. So I am, whether everyone gets to speak or not that wants to speak, we are going to stop public comment at 9:30 at the latest, but hopefully we can get through everybody before that. So let's keep on going. Dick, we're going to get to you next. We have someone coming up to the podium right now. Maybe.
Hi, I'm Bill Lowe, 187 South Shore Road in Hinsdale. I have a couple prepared comments and questions regarding the water supply and the engineers that have done their current study already. But a couple thoughts came to my mind since we were in this meeting. I think the bylaws were written in 1979. I was 16. We had rotary phones, no internet. And when I was a kid, we called them either motorhomes or Winnebagos. We didn't really call them RVs because they really weren't invented then. And it didn't evolve until recently. You know, so that's one thing. And then when it came to summer camp, that was a place rich kids went during the summer. It wasn't, you know, that's all it was. It wasn't a place to go camping. But I really want to focus on the water issue because I think we're missing that. Let me first say that, Mr. Graves, thank you for putting all the material on the website. And what I also thought was great was that you put all the letters. So it gave us an idea of what's being proposed and what the other citizens are talking about. So that was really helpful, and I appreciate that because a lot of us have gone through it, as you can tell. So in 1992 and also in 2004, the Mass EPA determined that the Hinsdale Flats watershed was one of 5 areas of critical concern in the Berkshires because of the limitation of the water supply from the aquifers and from the groundwater. And what they did at both occasions, they recommended that we do 2 things. One is to focus in on possibly limiting future usage around critical areas of the watershed. They suggested that the watershed is of limited capacity And they suggested that the town of Hinsdale look for alternative water uses because eventually that water usage could be in jeopardy. And we saw in 2020 and 2019, the supply of water was a significant issue. Now, that's one issue. The other issue is Belmont is fed by those same aquifers and groundwater, and it goes through the system. Has there been any study, a hydrological study to determine the water source for the entire town? Because out of Belmont, there's only 230 some households and businesses that draw from there. A majority of the town and the wetlands we rely on well water, which is supplied by that water source. Have there been any studies upriver or upstream to say that there is enough water with the increased usage from Northgate during a drought season that we're not going to be imposing higher water restrictions in the future? When we even imposed this year, when rain was plentiful, we imposed a water restriction just in case, based on last year and the year before. So has there been any determination from any of the engineers of the source water and a measurement, not the usage from Fernwood or the estimated usage of HAP? Has there been any estimation that does not involve Belmont?
I'll respond when you're finished.
Yeah, oh, okay. So that's a major concern. If we didn't have enough water the last 2 years, how are we going to have more water with more people drawing? So that's an issue. Also, the EPA recommended that the town consider state grants to acquire private lands in high-risk areas. So the question comes down to is, in this purchase of Emerson or the sale of Emerson, did the town pursue anything with the state to determine if maybe there could be a public-private partnership with other children's camps, or is there any way that they could buy those lands to protect them? Because both in 1992 and in 2004, they said that they want to limit the amount of activity there by purchasing the land, increasing security to reduce activity in those areas, and also to look for other alternatives for water because there's not much there. In 2007, the Mass EPA provided the Department of Hinsdale a study of the water supply. And they again recommended those directives. Then in 2008, with the help of the Massachusetts Rural Water Association, they developed a plan to implement those directives. So now in 2008, we're up to 2008, the source water protection plan that was put in place gave 2018 the vision plan to do those same things. So what they're essentially saying, the EPA, the Berkshire County, 2 agencies and local agencies, and 2 state agencies have suggested we limit the activity near high-risk areas, which is supplying not just Belmont Reservoir. The capacity of Belmont is secondary to the capacity of the amount of water that's in there. And that's the concern that we have. And that applies to the zoning. It applies to zoning because, again, in section 5, does it affect the general intent or does it conflict with the general intent of the neighborhood? Is it detrimental to the neighborhood? And is there an increased health? Now, they recommended that, or they suggest in their report, using the storm scepter and how they've had great success. However, in that report, Storm Scepter makes no guarantee that their equipment will work in this project, and nor does UMass. UMass doesn't make any guarantee either, which is on that study. They say it should work. What if it doesn't? You're putting additional vehicles in a high-risk area that supplies essentially the whole town. So my question comes down to, has there been a study that involves more than just Belmont in terms of water supply, because that's a concern? And then also, have there been investigated grants or public-private partnerships to look at possibly purchasing the camp through other people? Has any of that been made? That's questions to Mr. Graves, specifically in this project, because I know the last select board meeting, they passed on the first right of refusal.
We postponed.
You postponed, okay. So, and then the last question I have is for Mr. Graves. You mentioned to my wife that there seems to be as many people for this project as there are against it. So when I go on, which is, I appreciate that. So I go on what you posted on the website. We have 2 letters that are for it. One of the, and both of those people are here, the owner and the past employee. And then we have 150 pages of opposing letters. So my question to you is, what measurable metric are you using to determine?
I'm going to cut you off there. Bob's not really on trial. I mean, it's like, you can pose the question.
Okay, is there
If he chooses to answer, he can choose to answer.
Yeah, is there a metric in place to show the amount of people they're for? Because it's to use negative consent and say, well, people that are for it aren't going to come to this meeting or they're not going to write a letter. That's not a fair assumption of a representative government. Thanks.
Thank you. Brent. Yep. I should have made you sit up here, sorry.
That's okay.
Or make you take a microphone to your seat. Adam hardwired.
I'd like to address a few comments with respect to the ACEC, because it's been mentioned on multiple occasions. And for the next meeting, I will have a map of the ACEC. But for those who have not utilized MassGIS for reviewed information from the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program, the Hinsdale Flats ACEC is approximately half of the town of Hinsdale. So just to be clear, the ACEC, there is no priority habitat on our property. We've done a detailed analysis identifying all the limits of bordering vegetated wetlands on our property that are subject to the Wetlands Protection Act. But this idea that the Hinsdale Flats is somehow subject to Longview Avenue or just Camp Emerson property misrepresents the fact that how much area the ACEC actually covers in the town, going from Plunkett all the way to Lake Ashmere. So just, I think that's important to identify. And we're happy to submit that map for the record. So those who are not familiar with where to find that, that will be of the record for the permit itself. The town has actually done some of the recommendations with respect to the designation of the ACEC in identifying a source water protection zoning overlay district. Thankfully, our proposed project has honored and stayed outside the limits of that, and therefore we are not subject to review under that section of the zoning bylaw. It is in proximity to the proposed work. However, the town did, as a way of trying to better protect our source water, drinking water sources. If we were to do work within that area, we'd have much more specific requirements as to what we are or are not allowed to do. However, the applicant has proposed all work outside of that zoning district. So I would suggest that the town of Hinsdale has actually followed some of the recommendations and adopted that into your zoning bylaw. Another thing that's important to identify in terms of the ACEC, people's water supply wells, the aquifer, we don't look at one individual property. So one benefit of the ACEC is looking at overall groundwater flow, overall source water flow. And in this case, currently Camp Emerson has very little in the way of stormwater management, whether it's deep sump catch basins, storm sectors, what have you here. The proposal calls for a robust collection, treatment, and infiltration of runoff back into the ground. Right now, water falls on the road, just sheets off. There's really no collection, treatment, or recharge of that. What we're proposing, both with the storm scepters, basically a very large leach field for collected and treated stormwater. We're actually making an effort to decentralize. We're not piping all the water from this proposed development to one location on the property. We've identified a number of subcatchments in smaller areas. One of the main goals of stormwater management is to capture, collect, and put back into the ground to the extent practical the runoff that you generate based on proposed roofs, driveways, and parking areas. This proposal does that. There will be substantial more groundwater infiltration upon completion of the project as we proposed it compared to what is there today. Yes, you will not get a warranty from Storm Scepter. I'm not aware of any vendor that will provide a warranty under stormwater management best management practices. However, they are technology that have been proven. They do need to be maintained. There will be an operation and maintenance plan for a vac truck to clean those out periodically. That is a part of how they operate, is to not just install it and leave it alone there. That will be a part of that. That would be a part of our order of conditions and likely a condition in perpetuity for the project under the Stormwater Management and Wetlands Protection Act regulations. So I would suggest the project that's proposed does more to improve the ACEC and the overall groundwater quality when built as compared to our existing condition.
Thank you. Question about that. So to the best of your knowledge, as he suggested, no further study has been developed for the aquifers up past.
I cannot speak to any other studies that the town may have done, but I would identify, actually, and it's in the review on page 5, section CW-4, with Belmont having a safe yield of 197,000 gallons per day. That's a figure we all agree upon. I want to take a step back to talk about Title V proposed uses versus actual projected water use, because that was somewhat of a common theme in some of the letters by people, and I think it warrants attention. We do a great deal of different types of work as it relates to residential and commercial construction. And one of the things that's become more of a recurring theme is our state Title V design flows. Many of those are based on older plumbing fixtures, older uses. And we have, both on a residential and commercial scale, based on some of our more innovative and alternative septic systems, we have flow metering, so we have some more real-time data. And we find that our actual water usage for multiple, whether it's residential, commercial, what have you, we find on many occasions that the actual water use is substantially less than what the Title V projected use would be. And that's why we sought out information from the Forest Service to get a true, better understanding of what is the actual use of water for these facilities. So that's why our report was structured in the way that it was. I would say even in this study, even if you were to double the proposed water usage that we would, from what we've suggested, you would still have access to 50 to 60,000 gallons per day of additional yield for additional expansion served by this water district before you would be approaching your safe withdrawal limit from this. I cannot speak to what the town has done in terms of water studies or water restrictions. I will say any water restriction that the town would implement, we would be subject to that. We are no different than any other water user in town. If there's a water restriction that would impact our splash pad, our pool, we would have to comply. We would be subject to inspection like any other water user customer would be. I have one more point here. I have one more comment.
Yeah, that's fine.
With respect to water usage, regardless of the question of whatever connection fee there may or may not be charged as a part of this, we are a customer. Northgate Resorts will not be getting free water from the town of Hinsdale. Northgate will not be getting free sewage disposal from the town. We will be metered and pay accordingly based upon our actual usage. So first off, Northgate has every incentive to, with the construction, we're going to build a brand new water system throughout this property. I think that's been lost. It's essentially going to be a brand new, aside from the couple of buildings closest to Longview Avenue, nearly every building is going to have, or certainly all the new sites and the majority of the buildings will likely have a new water connection, brand new water main, watertight, less leaks, less issues than some of the older water systems have, including what Camp Emerson has had to deal with. We have every incentive to be as efficient with our actual water usage since we're paying for it. I don't know that and seeing some of the recent water bills for the camp here, I know Northgate, based upon their proposed use being more than what Camp Emerson has has every incentive to build the water system to the most water to the top standard and to maintain it to ensure that we're not leaking water or in any way being wasteful, as that will be a financial burden to the applicant if we are wasting water. And any capital improvements that would be coming down the road, I just know so we're in sewer zone 3. Obviously, it has the pump stations. They just went through a rate increase at the end of June of this past year. As a customer of that zone, as there are other capital improvements, then we would need to contribute based upon our share and our use of the system. So I think it's, to a certain degree, Northgate's proposal may help frankly subsidize future improvements that the town may need to do by being a customer and consuming what we propose to use on the site. So in terms of financial benefit, not only are we talking about taxes and employment here, but frankly, in terms of these utilities, EPA mandates, the city of Pittsfield right now is undergoing a major renovation to our wastewater treatment plant. That is going to be factored into the water rates that you're currently charging and will have to be charging going forward on the certainly on the wastewater side. So I think that's important to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bob, did you want to comment at all? Yeah. Did you want to comment at all?
My conversation with Holly Lowe was months ago when this first got started with the others. As far as folks coming in and the letters, yes, the letters now are, majority of the letters are coming from folks that are anti, and I would agree with that, but also several of the letters, multiple people have written back for it many times. There are folks in town who have expressed to me and to other folks in the town hall that they would like to see something like this. They'd like to see some business. And that the folks at Emerson have the right to sell their property.
How you doing, bud? Hanging in there?
I can't get any of it.
As far as the issue of what's the town doing, what's the town looking at, that has come up. We were offered the right of first refusal, as we are on this property, because it is a a recreational property, and it gives a tax break. So the town does have a right of first refusal. We're in the process now of considering that. Select Board did talk about that at their last meeting. They did not take any action on that at that time. They tabled it. That conversation will continue, but the price is $5.3 million. And that's a huge price for the town of Hinsdale. We have an awful lot of priorities. There are funds available. Certainly there are funds available that the state could get involved in and all of that, but we haven't explored all that yet. So to be fair to everybody, there's a lot to look at with this project. It's an awful lot of time and energy going into it. So we're all working on it. Thanks, Bob. Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. We're going to go to Dick Eastland.
Yes, I have a area of concern about that access road to the Belmont. I believe the DEP is going to require an unrestricted access to dedicated road. I see campsites on both sides of the road, and I don't think that should be incorporated into their infrastructure. So it's our right of way. It's not something to the grace of God that they're letting us use. It's ours by law, by right. So that should be the only use for that road. Also, I don't think they should tap into the main line coming down the road. They should come off the Longview Avenue like everybody else. The pressure on Maple Street is terrible as it is. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Sorry, I'm slacking. I forgot to make Dick give us his name and address, but I read it. So could you please?
Sure. Dave Pricken, DPC Engineering. We've had the opportunity to work with the town of Hinsdale over the last 5 years to look at both their water and sewer systems, the systems that are downstream of these properties. And we've also helped the town through a series of financial evaluations to better understand where their water and sewer rates are now, where they'll be in the future. So when we were asked to take a look at this project by Bob, our lens was as objective as possible. But I think 3 things that I could summarize that are items that the town needs to explore, whether you want to pursue this project or not. Things that I want clarification are, number 1, and Dick just did a great job on the water side. I'm not particularly concerned as much on the capacity side as I am on the access. There shouldn't be any encumbrances on the existing easement up to the reservoir. And there should be no connections from that main on that easement to the proposed property, my professional engineering opinion. Number two, the proposed sewer system that's proposed on the development is a multitude and series of grinder pumps, E1 grinder pumps. We've also used these all over, but from an engineering standpoint, the potential for odors and corrosion downstream of the proposed development is significant. It can be mitigated, but it's definitely something, given the recreational character of the neighborhood, that the town would really want to make sure you were protected. And three, it comes down to the financial elements of the project. Yes, there's a very clear path for how the proposed development would pay water and sewer rates if it were approved and after it were constructed. But I believe there's existing infrastructure needs that need to be flushed out through a series of conversations and likely discussions over, again, based on the change of use and the increase in water and sewer usage, facility connection charges. So those are the three things that I think we've summarized. Our comments are on the website. You know, you start reading any engineer's report, you'll fall asleep in 5 minutes. But those three kind of key elements, I just wanted to get those out there. We referenced a couple of times. The rest of the proposed project relative to stormwater, it's early, but the proponent, you know, has done an admirable job trying to address standards of care, state requirements, et cetera. Just those three themes need a little attention should you consider advancing the project. That's it.
Thank you. Brent, do you want to respond to that all, or it wasn't really a question, just a...
No, I have a comment.
Yeah.
I don't know. Thank you.
All right, we got all set there. We got one more.
This is the same woman from before.
Oh,
Lori Powers.
all right, we'll go to Lori.
I just wanted to follow up. They had answered a lot of the questions that I had asked earlier, but nothing came up about the financial questions.
No.
So is there someplace I should look for that, or is that going to be provided?
I don't believe there's, unless Chelsea wants to respond to that if she's still here, to give you that information right now. That is a question that the board will be asking when they get the chance to make their their comments and ask their questions.
Okay, thank you.
Fred, you're gonna be the last one.
Fred Long, Bonnie Road, and apologize for coming back, but I had to address two issues. One, some of the residents have been subtly slandered by the insinuation that we were trying to impinge on the seller's right of who to sell it to. We totally respect the seller's right to sell it to anybody they want to, just as hope the residents' rights to express our opinions about the effect of the business. We have a right to address whether the business is legal under the bylaws and how it will impact us, because we will be here and the seller will have left the town. So we do respect the seller can sell to anyone. The question here is whether the proposed operation is legal and will be detrimental to the neighborhood. We have every right to defend our opinions on that. So I would just wish that people wouldn't slander us by saying that we're impinging on her ability to sell to anyway. She has a right to sell to anybody, but that doesn't mean she has a right to put an illegal business into Hinsdale. That's your job to do. So the second issue I want to address really as quickly as I can is pedestrian safety, because it is one of the findings you're required to evaluate. It cannot unduly impair pedestrian safety. It is an important vision for Hinsdale. 2 of your 4 transportation goals focus on enhancing pedestrian safety. Pedestrian walking is major activity for senior citizens. In your vision and character of the town, you envisage taking care of senior citizens and providing activities for senior citizens. Senior citizens, which I can now officially declare I'm part of, have time to walk. We walk all the time because we don't have to work anymore. And it's lovely and it's our main source of exercise. So kudos to Hinsdale for respecting it, and let's address it. Well, I'm alarmed that it's not addressed at all in this application, despite the fact that in the bylaws, it needs to be addressed. They were questioned about this at the previous meeting, so it came up. Their response was, we looked at the database and there were no crashes or injuries, so therefore pedestrian safety is not unduly impaired. That's without any RVs there, and does it take somebody to be killed or maimed before pedestrian safety becomes a concern. So they didn't, in this return application, they don't address, they never still failed to address it, even though they were asked and it's required. There's one flippant remark to pedestrian safety in here, and it's with regards to the entrance, that by widening the entrance, they will enhance pedestrian safety. Really? I mean, if there's a 12-foot driveway, it's easier for me to navigate that than a 25-foot driveway where I have to watch for RVs going in and out. So I would argue that it doesn't enhance pedestrian safety. And if they were really so concerned about pedestrian safety, where's the crosswalk? You know, there's no sidewalks there up in that part of Longview. There's no crosswalk. So they have no concern. They're just not addressing pedestrian safety at all. And this is a time when they are asking for your permission to do this. I mean, they're not going to be any more accommodating to pedestrians than now. And they don't even have a crosswalk there. So if you put a crosswalk, where does the RV stop? The RV cannot stop in the crosswalk. That's illegal. So you can't look at your pedestrian sight lines from the edge of the road, because if your pedestrian crosswalk is there, you have to look at your pedestrian sight lines from further back. The other main entrance, so the other issue is the main entrance is going to be Michael's Road. Okay. Do they address pedestrian safety on Michael's Road? Michael's Road is a major area of walking, leisure walking. It is reasonably wide at Route 8, but it rapidly narrows to about 20 to 21 feet wide. Most RVs average between 8 and 10 feet wide. That's without mirrors. So 10 feet wide, you need 20 feet of width to get by, assuming you're going to have half an inch between two RVs. So you need more than 20 feet. They can't pass simultaneously in most places. There is no shoulder, no paved shoulder throughout most of Michael's Road. And as mentioned, there's no water control measures. So in the downhill portions, the ground is rutted out severely. So if you have two 10-foot RVs coming through, so the main protection now walking there is that there's not much traffic. So you can stand out there. I agree, traffic is nice now because that's the vision for the town. And that's why you've not overloaded. We've not taken our roads to capacity because it fits the vision of the town to make it a walking town. You can stand, the chance of you getting two trucks coming by simultaneously when a pedestrian goes by is very slim. If you increase that and make that the main access road, you've massively increased the chance of two 10-foot wide RVs coming through. And where is the pedestrian supposed to go? The vast majority of them have dogs, so I'm more than 1 foot. I'm 2 or 3 feet. The narrowest part of Michael's Road is at Frizzell Creek. It is 19 feet wide there. Okay, so you cannot take two 10-foot wide RVs through there. And then you've got a guardrail, about a foot and a half, and a guardrail, and it drops off to the creek. It's a beautiful sight. If you're going to walk, you're going to stop and look at the creek. That's exactly the most deadly place for two RVs to pass because the pedestrians got nowhere to go. So I just want to give you some feedback on pedestrian safety. I think water safety goes the same way. And we've heard a lot about water safety in their application. And in terms of water safety, the one activity that's not mentioned is open water swimming. That lake is beautiful open water swimming. There's a lot of open water swimmers. A lot of them are senior citizens, again, because we have the time and it's one of the few exercises we have. There's not a senior center. The town does not provide senior citizens with much, but except for a beautiful lake. And I'm not complaining because I've got a beautiful lake and beautiful places to walk. Please don't take them away from me. They say they're not going to use it any more than Emerson uses it. So the number of boats, but Emerson uses their docks for only 6 to 8 weeks. They do take their docks out when the kids leave. So they may still have activities on the campus, but the marina is closed as soon as a week or two after the kids are gone. So their intensive use, whatever that use is limited to 6 weeks. And so that 6-week limitation is really important because the residents and everybody share the lake. I won't go sailing when there are 2 or 3 motorboats going around and kayaks because I just can't do it. But I know it's only going to last for 6 weeks. So that's sharing. That's how we live in partnership. with the camps, because I get it. You need to run your business, go out there, have fun, throw the kids around, because when you close up and take your boats out in August, I can go sail in August, September. This is a totally different beast, because you're talking about, this is not sharing. This is giving the lake over to out-of-towners. So I just, those are my comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on behalf of Bob Mitchell, Rose of that Zoom.
Yes.
Transportation and the other comments.
Bob Mitchell.
Yes, please.
Could you click?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me all right? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback on my end.
We can hear you, Bob.
Okay. So I understand the comments that relate to pedestrian activity. The gentleman who just spoke apparently does walk in that area regularly. But the project as it's proposed is not intended to either encourage or provide pedestrian connectivity to Longview. Sidewalks simply don't exist anywhere, whether it's Michael's or Longview or any other nearby road. The fact that sidewalks don't exist is really a town issue, whether or not the town sees fit to provide such infrastructure to accommodate pedestrian activity. That's beyond the scope of this project to provide. But I will say that the site is designed specifically to provide all of the amenities necessary for campers to enjoy outdoor activities within the property, and it's marketed and effectively used that way at other Northgate facilities. That is the design that Northgate has specifically chosen to apply at its other facilities, and will do the same here. They do not envision a design that would encourage in any way a pedestrian walking from the camp to Lake Plunkett, for instance. It's not only a long walk, it's not something that they are designing to or encouraging. As the applicant has indicated, its provision of on-site amenities, including access to other bodies of water, and recreational opportunities exist within the confines of its own property, without the need to impinge on or impact the public infrastructure. So we, given the late hour here, we're glad to further elaborate on that at a future hearing, but it would not be appropriate, in our view, to provide crosswalks to nothing, because sidewalks don't exist, and to provide infrastructure that is incompatible with the infrastructure that is provided along Longview or Michael's Road. And I'll end with that. I'm glad to elaborate when we have more time at a subsequent hearing.
Thank you. At this point, there's been plenty of public comment. At this point, I'm going to make I see we have a couple people on Zoom, but this has gone on way too long, I believe. We have gotten several comments. We're starting to get comments that are repeating themselves. I'd like to make a motion to close public comment at this point. Yeah, hang on 1 second. Yes. Yeah, there's that really.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm Joel Bard, I'm here from KP Law and Town Council. And I want to recommend that you not close the public hearing now. The reason being that we've heard that at least the consultants, the applicants, and maybe house consultants are going to be coming back, but I understand correctly, we're going to be providing feedback on some of the comments that have been made, and that kind of information, anything of a factual nature, really can only be provided to the board during the public hearing session. So I understand that my sense is the board feels that you've heard more than enough, and perhaps what you might say in continuing the public hearing to the next date, which has already been flagged and publicized, that public comment will be significantly limited, given the extent of public comment, maybe allow people to speak for 60 or 90 seconds or whatever. But the primary purpose of concluding the public hearing is to hear from the applicant, their consultants, perhaps the town's consultants, looking to close the public hearing after that. You may want to, at that point, before closing the public hearing, then engage in discussion among board members, make it clear that while the public hearing is not formally closed, you're not going to be taking public comment until after the board members have had a chance to discuss and see if you have questions of the applicant, of the consultants, of the town's consultants, and perhaps people who made specific comments, and then at that point, close the public hearing.
Yeah, I wasn't intending to close the hearing, just the public comment portion. The board, me and myself, I know Bruce, Dan, we have several questions, but we obviously are not getting to that portion of the meeting. So then at this point, I would like to make a motion to suspend the public comment portion of the meeting.
That have to do with the proposals, because I have seen comments, and some comments of the new stuff that was.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
So when we see the new information.
I can't say it, goddamn. So again,
you repeat what you said.
She wants to know if she may be able to respond after new information is brought in. So I'm going to make a motion to suspend this portion of public comment of the meeting.
Or to continue the public hearing.
To continue, well, we're going to continue that.
Yeah, okay.
Do you second that?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. At this point, I'm also going to make the motion to suspend the hearing in its entirety to December 14th, 2021 at the same location. Is there anyone second that motion?
I second that.
Secure what time?
6:30, I'm sorry. So at this point, we are going to suspend the meeting for this evening. It is 9:40 on November 30th, 2021. And this meeting of the zoning board to act on Northgate's application is going to be suspended until December 14th at 6:30 in the same location. I'd like to thank everybody for attending. Thank you for all being civil. Thank you for all the information. And unless someone at Northgate requests more time, as of now, we're going to be back here on December 14th. And thanks everybody again. Appreciate it.
Nice job, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to stop the whole thing. I just stopped.